across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. 3 minutes after 1 o'clock. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Today marks, as you've been hearing, the 100 days in office for US President Donald Trump with his second term, so far shaped by tough immigration crackdowns, the tariffs, a sweeping attack on DEI programs, and the dismantling of federal departments. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? It's a simple question. Thoughts on that? Meanwhile, across his border, Mark Carney has said Trump will never break Canada after leading the country's Liberal Party to an election win against the Tories in a race that looked literally impossible just a couple of weeks ago. And an over-reliance on solar and wind is being blamed for Europe's biggest blackout, which disrupted cities, transport and hospitals across Spain, Portugal and parts of France. There are those who fundamentally disagree with that assessment. We'll drill down, as it were, into the details a little later. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Is the world a better place because of Trump? It's the 20th of January this year that Donald Trump became the 47th President of the United States. That's exactly 100 days ago. There's something totemic but equally utterly irrelevant of judging a person, a government or a thing based on a random figure, but nonetheless, 100 is a century. It's a neat and tidy score. It's a full percentage, and so it's not a bad marker to take a look at what's been going on over there in the Oval Office. And it's worth asking that question. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? It'll be hard to find an administration anywhere on planet Earth that has acted so fast, so indignantly, so passionately, so divisively in such a short period of time. And it is also worth, and I'll have to keep underlining this throughout the course of the programme, that Donald Trump is essentially doing what Donald Trump said he would do. If you are surprised by anything and have been left clutching your pearls in the last 100 days, you are an idiot. That doesn't mean it's always been good, by the way. It certainly doesn't mean he's always been right. But one thing we can all agree on is that the 100 days of Donald Trump couldn't have played out more typically had it been a Netflix drama. What a surprise. Donald Trump does Donald Trump. Releases of prisoners on Capitol Hill, that was day one. Soldiers to the borders of Mexico, firing huge numbers of civil servants, cancelling aid, and all manner of wacky initiatives which Mr. Trump claims were costing American billions. He had a particular purge on foreign aid, I think about 80% cut to that budget, hundreds, thousands losing their job. The president said, not unreasonably, why are we giving money to countries that hate us? It's a fair point. He gave Zelensky a bit of a public lashing in the Oval Office. He put tariffs on everything in every country. Even your pet hamster wasn't immune from a bit of additional taxation. He wants to turn Gaza into the Sunset Strip and says he can find peace between Ukraine and Russia. Oh, and if you sign off your emails with preferred pronouns, you won't get a reply from any government department. Yes, he is the self-proclaimed woke finder general of the Western world. So far to date, he signed 139 executive orders, 39 proclamations, 42 memorandums. This guy does not hang around. Now, amidst the speed and the hunger of the administration, there has clearly been some sticky points along the way. More U-turns than you could count, legal challenges to almost every one of those executive orders, reversals of tariffs, and then reversals again. His hate affair with Ukraine, which turned into a love affair, and then back to a hate affair, and then back again. The same for Russia. Elon Musk, his right-hand man, now taking an early backseat, gone very, very quiet. They stuck together like flipping glue, but no longer. There's been rows in the Oval Office, but Trump doing Trump. But is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? It's a serious question. I was explaining to my little boy this afternoon, or this morning rather, who's 11. He said, what are you talking about on the radio today? I said, well, there's a couple of things out there. I said, there's Donald Trump, 100 days in office. And he said, oh, yeah, you have to mention the assassination attempt. I said, look, you're only 11, mate, but that happened before, so, butt out. I said, and then, of course, there's the big blackout in Europe. I said, what have those two stories got in common? And he struggled a bit with that one, but so I said, look, they're both foreign stories. Ordinarily, we would look for stories that give you the hump or the ache or concern. When you kick your quilt off the bed in the morning, the stuff that's in your mind, generally speaking, are not foreign stories. But we live in international times, and of course what happens in America has huge implications for the rest of the world, and in particular, I think often disproportionately for this country as well. I'm not just talking about tariffs, everything from security, safety, defence, the list goes on. So in that respect, it's a very relevant question to us as Brits, but it's a wider question for planet Earth, I suppose, given the kind of wars that are being fought on so many fronts. We famously talk about Ukraine, we talk about Israel. Look at China, look at those other pocket wars that are going on in a variety of countries around the world. There's a lot happening right now. And of course, the United States is the world's policeman. Generally speaking, it has been, that's for sure. Is the world a better place 100 days on from where it was on the 19th of January before Mr. Trump came into office? And if so, why? And it might not be the obvious stuff. I mean, it could be as simple as, well, DEI. I mean, that's been contagious. So other countries are going, well, we don't have to do this malarkey anymore. We can move forward, finally. The substantial stuff is there for all to see, and of course tariffs and the effect it has on the global economy. 0344 499 1000. That's our number. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Steve N. Allen, the broadcaster and comedian, is back with us. Afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me back.
It's lovely to have you with us as ever. So it's 100 days since Big Don moved back into the Oval Office. Downing Street on the same day issued a UK-EU statement rejecting his policies supporting Ukraine, the Paris climate deal and free trade as part of Starmer's EU reset. So we've got this graphic divide. But let's have a reminder of the US president's time in office so far. It's 100 days. Here's a little of what it looks like.
Heading back to the White House, Mr. Trump pledges to take swift and sweeping action to close the southern border and to deport millions of migrants here illegally.
Donald Trump's political career has been defined by his promise to deal with illegal immigration.
My administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history.
We've seen illegal border crossings drop 98%.
The southern border now, under his leadership, has the lowest number of illegal crossings in the history of the United States of America.
We are the face of why there is becoming change. President Trump, thank you.
He's a man of his word.
He wants to get rid of fentanyl. He wants to make sure that we stop the killing of innocent Americans.
President Trump was able to do in 7 weeks what the Biden administration couldn't or wouldn't do in 4 years. Right now, as you and I are talking, we have the most secure border in the history of this nation.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation, but it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Oh, that's by anybody's standards, Steve, that's a cracking line at the end there. You couldn't have, if you'd written that for a script, you'd be that would be one of the most famous movie lines ever, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can see when Hugh Grant gets around to playing Donald Trump, that'll be exactly what he says.
That will be exactly that. So 100 days down the line, I mean, there's no one going to doubt the fact that a lot of things have happened rather quickly. I mean, it's been hard to take a breath. The speed of which everything from tariffs to border control and goodness knows what else in between. So speed and the acceleration of getting things into action is there for all to see. Whether it's good or bad depends, I suppose, on where you sit politically. But is the world a better place, Steve, for those 100 days?
I love being invited onto a place like this because that means the rest of the afternoon will be battling my social media when people tell me how stupid I am. No, I don't think it is. I don't think it's just all in one direction. You have to take a net on this rather than a gross. There's some good, there's some bad. In America, is America better than it was? Well, there's been lots of gains. But for the rest of the world, look, I'm sitting in the UK right now. Do I really give two hoots about the strength of the southern border? It's not going to impact my life. And yet issues to do with what's happening in Ukraine, yeah. Issues to do with tariffs, yeah. So I think the rest of the world is not doing as well as America from having this new president. That remains true. I know there are two types of Trump derangement syndromes. There's the one that we talk about, people who of the left who you see on TikTok, and I love watching them. They cry about it. I can't believe American voted, whatever. And we've talked before about who cries into a phone camera. Are you wronging? Yeah. But there's also the people who think he can do no wrong. And seeing those trying to pivot like a windsock has been amazing as he changes his mind on tariffs and they still defend 100% which direction he's going in. But neither of those two positions are true. Some people will have, you will have a mixture, won't you? It's a spectrum. You can't get everything right. It's statistically impossible. So I don't think the tariffs have been a particularly good way to have a trade war with China. Thanks for dragging us into it. But loads of other things that I don't think are exactly the best of doing it. The southern border is a win. You do have to mention the fact that one of the reasons it wasn't fixed is because Trump didn't let the Republicans settle that issue, wanted it to be active during the election campaign. But even if they hadn't done that, it's not like Biden would have sorted it out. So there's much to mix into the pot, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But I suppose there is I said it in the intro there, Steve, there is a potential contagion in these things, isn't there? So whilst, what happens on the southern border may not clearly doesn't literally affect us here, but it does inform the narrative. It does fire up the discussion about what is possible. And, of course, for so long, the two main parties in this country have tried to talk tough on immigration and have got absolutely nowhere and really haven't done much. If you look at it, they've done nothing at all. I mean, they'd be getting an E- if this was being marked by one of my old teachers. So they haven't succeeded. But this potentially has at least fueled the point that if you want to do it, it is possible. And as Trump said there, they didn't need new legislation. They just needed a new president.
Yeah. And look, I think you're right. It gives license to a way of dealing with a problem. Before someone's done it, you don't think it's possible. Before Bannister did the 4-minute mile, no one thought a human could do it. As soon as he does it, like the next day, someone's like, oh, I'll trot one of them out. So, yeah, you get this paradigm shift, I suppose, is what we're talking about here. And I think DEI is the better example, that with that change in America, that contagion of changing our opinion on that. But look, it's the kind of topic, that and trans issues, are the kind of topics that we can talk about loads, newspapers write about loads, but you find the direct link from someone's life to that issue. It's not as common as the direct link between someone's life and the cost of stuff. So I think tariffs will be more impactful, especially for Americans, but the rest of the world, than these issues that we talk about. And my take on this immigration thing, our politicians love to talk about it. They could have sorted it, but look around, make sure no one's looking. They didn't want to sort it because no politician wanted to have the economic hit of actually solving the problem and having a bit of a, maybe it crops up as a recession. Every government would be judged more harshly for having a recession than for failing to deal with immigration. So that's exactly what they've done.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Well, one area that won't be celebrating the 100 days of Donald Trump is, of course, their nearest neighbours, Canada. And this was one of those classic examples where, Trump said something that had Kamala Harris said it, this is derangement syndrome the other way that you alluded to. If Kamala Harris had come out and said, Canada should be the 51st state, we would have people calling her absolutely mental for this. She's completely lost the plot. Trump says, yes, good idea, isn't it? Let's go and nick another country. Well, it was looking like they could have a very cosy relationship with Canada until yesterday when Mark Carney's Liberals won the Canadian election. I mean, talk about a comeback. This is Trudeau's party, of course, now run by Mr. Carney, former governor over here of the Bank of England, keeping him as the Prime Minister. Let's have a listen to what he said.
America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen. But we also must recognize the reality that our world has fundamentally changed. We are exploring everything this country has to offer. We are supporting our friends and neighbors in the crosshairs of President Trump through a crisis that we did not create. United, we will win this trade war and build the strongest economy in the G7, an economy that works for everyone.
Well, there he is. And by the way, Steve, I don't know if you were listening earlier, but Julia got to know him a little bit because his kids went to the same school as her kids, and they ended up having a row in the broccoli aisle of Waitrose over Brexit. And that's I can't think of Mark Carney without seeing Julia Hartley-Brewer and a broccoli in the same image. for the rest of time. Bigger than anything else.
He strikes me as the kind of guy that certainly eats a lot of broccoli. He's got that vibe going on.
He's got that. He probably liquidizes it as well, I'd imagine. Has it intravenously. Yeah. What's interesting about that speech he gave, and I suppose this is another great thing about on the plus side of having Trump in power, is that you can say whatever you like about him, and that was very critical. You wouldn't normally, previously, before January the 20th, we wouldn't have heard a leader of another country talk about a leader of another country like that. But that's how Trump talks, so people now talk like that in response. You know, if I see him, I'm going to smack him in the face. And then the next shot, if it was a drama, it would just cut to them having tea in the Oval Office and everything is fine, and they would say complimentary things. Trump doesn't care about that. He's fine with it. So we've changed the way leaders do dialogue almost.
Yeah, in fact, Mark Carney should be a whole lot nicer. Maybe send him a fruit basket or a broccoli basket to thank him, because I think the person who won in that election was Trump. Because there's not, look, I mean, it's Canadian politics, so it's not as though we get every single piece of detail in our news about it, but we get the general sense of it. They were absolutely dead in the water, which is what happens to political parties. Yeah. You have a decade or so in charge and people are sick of you. There's an issue of incumbency. Like pretty much every election that's happened, the big 2024 into 2025 year of doing elections, most of the nation has been sick of who they had. Sorry, most of the globe has been sick of who they had. They've managed to turn it around, not because there's been some revival, not that anyone looks at Mark Carney and goes, this absolute long drink of water, I want this guy. But they got the threat, didn't they? The idea that someone like Trump was saying, we want Canada as the 51st state, whether he means it or not, it doesn't matter. It's a good topic that he can bring up whenever he wants people to be writing about an issue that's not the one he wants to talk about. Just bring up that. This is the old school, isn't it? I know he doesn't work with them anymore, but the idea of flooding the zone. You consider the media to be your enemy. You throw stuff out there that the media can't help but absolutely get stuck into. And that's what it is. It's a flare.
I think, if you go to davidike.com, I'm sure that they will tell you that this was all set up beautifully, and Trump did all of this knowing that it would enrage Liberal voters, get them out of their homes into the ballot box and bring Carney into office. So it's turned out exactly as the global order wanted it to. Yeah. Carney in the hot seat, Trump over the border in the White House. That's all part of the bigger deal, part of the bigger picture. Ask
Can't help but imagine. Yeah. I bet David Icke's got, no, it's not .com, he'll have a .net, won't he?
Absolutely, without any doubt. Stay with us, Steve. Steve Van Allen, the comedian broadcaster, with us looking at the big stories of the day. Responding to that, we'll take your calls shortly. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? We're going to cross to the States and speak to two voices as well. One pro, one not necessarily quite as flattering over the US president in a few moments too. Our lines are open, 1:20. This is Talk.
Well, the tariffs coming down is going to get U.S. products, particularly agricultural products, into other countries that have been keeping us out. And you are seeing, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars of manufacturing being announced, expanded manufacturing in the U.S., companies coming back to the U.S. And we just saw that Apple is going to move their manufacturing from China to India to avoid the tariffs.
Yeah. How's
again,
that working out for
time.
American workers? So they're going to get they're not going to get a job whether it's in India or China, are they?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 23 minutes after 1. Steve and Alan is with us. We're chewing the fat on the big stories of the day. And this was the other big globally dominating story. It happened in Spain and Portugal, of course. But congratulations are in order. Yesterday, technically, they achieved net zero, 25 years ahead of schedule. Well, kind of. Let's hear from a caller who arrived. This was to our show yesterday in Valencia, just to realise nobody had turned the lights on. Here he is.
Hi, Ian. I arrived at about 12 this morning, so for about the last 5 hours, I've been stuck in Valencia Airport. I tried to get a metro. I sat in the metro, and thankfully, if it had been 5 minutes earlier, I would have been stuck in the tunnel. I was waiting for the metro to leave the station. The lights went out.
Wow.
The lights went on, the lights went out, and then someone came and told us there was a power outage and we had to leave. And then I tried to get a bus, but I was told the traffic signals are all down in Valencia, so driving seems actually quite hazardous. And then my husband said he was able to pick me up, but it's like an hour's drive. He didn't have enough petrol, and I'm told the kind of petrol stations are closed as well.
This is like a sitcom gone wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think I'm relatively lucky in this situation. The airport's got generators. I'm sat outside the toilets, and there's plug sockets, and there's food available. But there's lots of really, ranging from very stressful to outright dangerous situations across the city of people dealing with it.
But apparently there was a pub there, Steve, so not all bad. Depends on who you listen to as to whose fault this is, but hasn't taken long for people to say, this is all about your renewables.
Yeah, it all depends what you mean by fault, doesn't it? Renewables have a role to play in this. Was it the cause of it? No. Did it leave them vulnerable? Yeah, I think that's what it is. I've got to be honest, right? Normally, I'm a nerd, so if you bring up a sciencey one, I'll have a little read on the internet to work out some of the science behind it so I know what I'm dealing with. They're talking about the inertia in the system.
Yes, I saw this. Inertia kept coming up.
But the one thing that I'm really poor on is AC. The kind of physics that goes into alternating current stuff, I've never been able to get my head around it because there's stuff to do with impedance and induction. Right, I'm gone. I was more of a DC kind of guy.
You've always been a direct current kind of guy. I know that.
I'm less AC, more DC.
Well, indeed, yeah, let's not go there. But yes, so there is, again, we've got all of these different analysis as to what happened. I mean, it could just be that the lights went out because, the modern world, like any time, every now and again, something goes wrong. That's it.
Yeah. But I think that happens and you don't get such a critical failure that goes like nationwide. What you get is smaller problems that can be fixed. I kind of understood. This is my main point on this, right? I remember at school, and I'm getting old now, so this was a while ago, but GCSE, balanced science GCSE, we talked about this kind of stuff, and you understand that gas, one of the things it's really good at is you can up it when you need it. You get some sort of requirement, whip that up there. Nuclear's not as good. Renewables, very poor at it. It's not like you can go, we need a bit more of this electricity. More sun, please. So that's never going to be the thing. The solution was always to have some sort of battery or capacitance in there to give the resilience. But that's why are we not doing the level of science that I was taught when I was at school in the 90s, for crying out loud?
That was all it was all very basic. I can remember even almost not quite a direct quote, but there's windmills and they can make weathery stuff and energy stuff out of the weather, but you can't store it. I mean, that was always it was just route one of all of this. So what I do find interesting, however, is that such a large part of a country's infrastructure over such a huge geographic area and across borders could be so badly affected. That I think is what's taken a lot of people by surprise, is that there isn't sort of more localised issues. And yes, of course, there were some generators that kicked in, but lots of areas have had a really, really tough time on this one.
Yeah, but isn't that predictable because of how it developed. It's not as if someone built the infrastructure 5 years ago, and therefore it would be fitting for the kind of power profile, energy profile that country or any country uses. It was built when stuff started to originally be used. So your infrastructure would match loads of that inertia that apparently they have by having spinning generators. So the infrastructure would be exactly suitable for the kind of energy profile when all you had was fossil fuels. And then you change it. What you should do is make sure you change everything so that now you need better resilience. You need some form of storage where you can just pump some of that back into the system. And if you do Part A without Part B, you've built up the problem that one day comes along. I know they said it was because of some crazy weather. It was less crazy than we've had, and our weather has not been crazy. It ain't that. I know that much. But you're right, some kind of problem happens, and instead of it just being a small thing that can be dealt with, because they've dropped the ball, because all politics seems to be short-termism, how do we make it look good in the next 4 years so we can win another election rather than fix a proper problem long-term?
Yeah, the weather thing was a bit weird. I mean, the idea that it's never been 23 degrees in flipping Spain and Portugal, for God's sake. Please. And this one as well. Now Labour is facing a summer of discontent. They've had the winter. Nurses, teachers, council staffs threatening strikes. As the Tories say, Rachel Reeves is soft on unions. Of course, they want some more money, 3 to 4%. That would have to come from either spending cuts or tax rises. We're told by Rachel Reeves neither of those are on the table. Sorry, not going to be possible. Spoiler alert, it probably will. But the answer, if you don't get those, or if the unions don't get what they want, is strike action, something we're told only happens under the wicked Tories, apparently.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was going to say I'm not looking forward to it, although a summer of discontent sounds better than a winter of discontent, doesn't it? Because at least it's summer.
Summer of discontent sounds, like something that, Bob Harris would be presenting, from a tent somewhere. I'm up for some of that.
It's one of the greatest albums, Summer of Discontent. I think it's a Bryan Adams song.
Or is it the Mamas and the Puppers or someone like that? I don't know. It would be someone like that.
We joke it will mean absolutely. Imagine we're all going to smell like Birmingham, which is not something we want to do. It's going to be a case of strikes, isn't it? Because there's no way around it. Yeah. I understand what you say. Like you say, you only get strikes under Tories, but actually there's a bigger expectation from the unions that will get what they want from Labour. So I think that expectation gap will the thing that causes all the problems now. I don't see any way around it. There is no more money. So we're just going to have to stomach. It's not like I've seen my GP ever. I think he works behind a curtain like the Wizard of Oz. There's no chance of seeing the actual human.
Yeah, I've got the same GP, funnily enough. There we go. Yeah. Steve, thank you, as ever. Steve N. Allen, the comedian and broadcaster, with us on the programme. You want to digest and jump into any of the discussions there, you know the number, 0344 499 1000. Lead question today as well. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? Is he celebrating? I don't know. He doesn't drink. He might be having one of those famous Diet Cokes. Celebrating 100 days in office. A lot has changed, but is the world better because of it? We're going to chat to Michael Graham on Capitol Hill. He is, of course, our man in Washington. And Malcolm Nance, the former US Navy intelligence officer, with us as well. They have two very different views of Trump and, crucially, your views as well. Our lines are open. It's 1:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Lots going on here. Dean in Oxford says, looking at the channel, I take a character like Trump 8 days a week. Imagine where we'd be with him as the chief, says Dean. One here, hello, Ian. Trump, 100 days, I'm fascinated what he can do, but I wish our leaders would have some of his drive. I think that is a really important point, isn't it? Even if you disagree with him, getting stuff done, even if it is a bit chaotic and moving fast, is something that some of his critics will, on a good day, acknowledge. Well, we shall find out in a moment. Malcolm Nance, the former US Navy intelligence officer and author, will be with us. Donald Trump calling new polls fake news after some showed he got the lowest 100-day approval rating in 80 years. This is his second term, of course. He's the 47th, but he was also the 45th President of the United States. Big crackdowns on immigration, global tariffs, taking aim at DEI programs, cutting back on federal departments, particularly aid departments. Meanwhile, over at Downing Street, interesting bit of timing here, they're apparently working on a joint statement with the EU to push back against some of Mr. Trump's more controversial moves. Let's first speak to Michael Graham, US political commentator, managing editor of Inside Sources, and our man on the Hill. Michael, good afternoon to you. I mean, it's 100-day. I mean, it's a random number, but it's a nice, neat and tidy number. So we tend to look at it when, that's 100, let's talk about stuff.
Hey, it's a great excuse to drink. So I really don't need any. So there you go. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I'll take a Bushmills neat. Thank you very much. Trump's a polling average. I like to look at the Real Clear Politics average of polls. He's 45% approve, 52% disapprove, which is not great, but for him, that was better than most of his first term. What I think is worth noting is that most presidents get a little bit of a honeymoon, and Trump was at unusually high polling numbers when he won the popular vote, when he won all of the swing states, when he first took office. And one of the things that frustrates his supporters is that Trump's never going to have goodwill. He's just not that kind of guy, you know. He's not going to get a kumbaya moment, but he had less than bad will. And he's exploded out of the gate and stepped all over that. And the argument on the Trump people's side is, look, we've only got basically 2 years, because once you have the midterms, things are going to change. People are going to be they're going to be trying to elect the next president, whatever. We've got to make a lot of change and make it fast. And I heard an interesting argument from a wise political insider in D.C. who said everything Trump has done has now laid the table for the rest of that next 2 years. For example, the people who are going to court to fight him on immigration. These lawsuits are going to work through the court, and every time they generate a headline, it's going to be a pro-Trump headline, because it's going to be Trump fighting to keep illegals out. We had a case of a judge in Wisconsin, a state judge, who tried to help an illegal immigrant escape being arrested. She snuck him out of the courthouse. She's now being prosecuted. That case is going to throw off headlines. That'll be.
Yeah, I'm no lawyer, but that ain't right.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm pretty sure you want to take the criminals and put them in front of the judge.
I think that's how it works.
Yeah, I think so. So that's going to... And then on tariffs, the pro-Trump argument is, look, what's going to follow now are going to be a series of deals. And if you get to a year from now, which is what Republicans are worried about going into the midterms, and the story is that things seem to be getting better, people feel better, there's more deals, there's more reports of jobs, people opening factories or adding more people to their jobs locally, that as this rolls out, the benefits are going to be here, and they're going to be here in about 12 to 16, 18 months. And that's a narrow for Republicans who have to try to hold the House in 2026, and they only have a 4 or 5 vote margin. That's a tough math.
Yeah, we keep talking about this thing. I'm sure it's the same phrase over there, Trump derangement syndrome. So, Donald Trump could give everybody $10,000, a Labrador and a brand new Tesla. and you know, he would still be the worst man in the world.
Right. Well, the joke over here is a child is drowning at a golf hazard, and Trump walks across the water, reaches in, pulls him out, and saves him. And the New York Times headline the next day is "Trump can't swim." So that's
super.
That's how.
But the derangement syndrome works the other way as well, doesn't it? Because there are people who, like the tariff thing. I mean, if anyone ever studied economics at Oxford or Harvard or any of those great institutions, they would, I'd say that with a degree of honesty, they would, you know, never ever have dreamt that you would have this extraordinary, what people have politely called a chess game of, we're going to put a tariff there. Oh, we're taking the tariff off. No, it's going back on. It's going to be bigger than it was last week. Actually, we're going to cancel that tariff. We're going to make it smaller. In fact, there's no tariff whatsoever. But over here, we're going to put tariffs on hamsters. Yes, anyone importing hamsters, it's a 98% tariff. And on it goes. There's a reversal, then there's not a reversal. And there are the Trump deranged on the other side who go, yeah, this guy's brilliant. He really knows what he's doing. So it works the other way too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are people who, you know, under the Obama years would have gone nuclear. Obama had proposed a massive tariff regime, and they would have pointed out that the world's economy is just a lot more global than it was. It just is. You know, you walk in a grocery store and you've got, you know, avocados from Mexico and, you know, cheese from Britain and, you know, half the stuff from China, Korea. It's just the world we live in. You're just not going to go back to the day where the stuff you buy is predominantly solely locally sourced. Even this is the announcement today. Trump is going to be in Michigan, a key swing state. They've got an open U.S. Senate seat there. He'd love to have a Republican pick that up from the Democrat. He's going to talk about how they're easing some of the tariffs related to car parts, whatever. That's because even American-made cars aren't made in America entirely. You know, the metal comes from Ukraine and China, and then it's processed in Mexico. So that's just the world we live in. And so there are a lot of confusion. It's not helping him. And I think the wise political sage I will quote is my lovely bride Buttercup, who, watching the news this morning and all that stuff, the economy, said, I only voted for the guy for one thing, the economy, and he's screwing that up. And I think that if that becomes the narrative, that's very problematic for Republicans. If somehow, you know, a year from now, people say, actually, you know what? I'm surprised. Look how well the economy is doing better than I thought. Some good stuff has happened, some bad stuff has happened, but overall, it's what I thought I was getting from Trump. You'll be better. But right now, he's working on other stuff.
And you are spot on about things being global. When I was a kid, Michael, and I would come home from school and tuck into an episode of Different Strokes, who didn't like that? And I would see the little guy eating something called a Reese's bar. I used to think, what the hell is that? That's like, what is it? Something that what is that thing? Come to my house today. My fridge is full of these things. You know, the kids got Reese's Easter eggs. You know, so there is a global component. 100 days on, how do you rate him then? Final question, Michael Graham. How do you think the guy is doing in the Oval Office?
So I'm giving him a incomplete, because he's launched a lot of things that are much bigger than the 100 days. It would kind of be like trying to judge Obama by his first 100 days when you knew he wanted to do a health care reform. Yeah. Well, it was months before we found out what that health care reform was going to be, and it was about a year before it passed. And so if you'd graded him then, you know, obviously people were giving Obama, you know, 8. Remember, he won the Nobel Peace Prize before he even became president, just because he was Obama. So I'm not going to do the same thing the Nobel Committee did, when I'm sure they wish they had that prize back. And, you know, graded today. I will say, he has promised that he is going to deliver to the class an amazing, you know, term paper that's full of great things. If he accomplishes just a third of the stuff that he wants to accomplish, he will be one of the most consequential presidents of the last 100 years. But if he drives it into a ditch, he'll be one of the worst. So
we will, we are going to speak again soon, I know. Michael, thank you. Michael Graham, US political commentator, managing editor at Inside Sources. Let's now get a word from Malcolm Nance, former US Navy intelligence officer and author of much note, it should be said. Malcolm, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you back. I don't know whether it's interesting, isn't it? Whenever we do a debate on something that I think is fairly serious, it's always the irrelevant stuff. I'm now getting emails and messages about different strokes, for goodness sake. I mean, you know, who didn't love different strokes, right? I mean, back in the day, that was a thing.
My first thought was, gosh, you're old, you're younger than me. That's amazing. I did not come home from school to watch Different Strokes. That was about 10 years in my future.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, it wasn't quite the Golden Girls, though, was it? But that's a whole other story. Listen, let's get down to some real issues. 100 days in office, as I said to Michael a second ago. It's interesting what we all do in the world of media and journalism. 100 days is, really quite an irrelevant number, but it's a nice rounded number. It's a century. It's the hot 100%. So we dwell on that and look at it as a bit of a first base moment for any leader, in this case, Donald Trump. It's not been dull. We can't accuse him of that, right? It's been anything but dull over there at the White House.
Well, it certainly has been an exciting period in American history when we go from one of the most stable economies that we've ever had. We had a little touch of inflation there, brought back down under control, millions and millions of jobs made in the United States. But one of the more interesting factors that we saw over the last 4 years was how propaganda, misinformation, disinformation made one of the great economies of American history was thought to be awful, and it was not awful. We are now seeing what awful is. Things are not great in the United States. As they say, we are not okay. For Donald Trump's excitement, flair, whatever you want to call it, he is taking a wrecking ball to the United States economy, to the United States government. And at this point, it's not about him going across a golf course and rescuing a child by walking on water. He's more like a drunk monkey with an AK-47 and hand grenades that's shooting and throwing and enjoying the destruction in every direction.
But he said, you have to take the medicine. If you do that, it might be a little wobble or a bump in the road, but things will come good.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like saying that you're completely healthy. You have fantastic cholesterol levels. Your health is doing great. Your cardio's awesome. You've got a 45, sleeping pulse. And then the next thing you do is you take crack cocaine and inject heroin all at the same time and hope that that's going to give you sharper attention. By the way, that was Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was the heroin addict who did that. Listen, this is not great what he's doing. People love this excitement. The news media, even in some respects, like the adventure of what's happening here. But America is about 2 weeks away from a new economic Pearl Harbor. Technically, the attack happened when Trump implemented his crazy tariff scheme, when he let Elon Musk run rampant throughout government. But in about 2 weeks, the last container ship from China that has material ordered before the tariffs is going to hit the port of Long Beach. And after that, there is nothing that is coming to the United States. And you're going to see shortages. You're going to see Walmart empty. You're going to see people really have a dim view of the kind of medicine that Donald Trump wants, because no one really knows why he's doing it. It doesn't make any economic or even political sense.
But does it make sense from this perspective, Malcolm, that he's kind of he's reclassified America's position on the stage, where we have the dominance of China? Mr. Trump, whatever game he's playing, and it clearly is not easy to follow, certainly with the Trumps and with the tariffs, and then the reversal of the tariffs, and then the reversal again, and this country yes, that country no, oh sorry, it's the other way around. A lot of confusion. You're absolutely right, and there will clearly be some economic effects to all of that. But the narrative is that Trump is now the conductor again. The US president has not had that position in the world for a long, long time. He's recalibrated your country. He's put you back on the A-list.
A-list? We ran the A-list. We were the bouncer at the door with the list.
Yeah, but then you had Biden in power. But Biden wasn't on the A-list, was he?
Biden was his responsibility, as the responsibility of all presidents, is the responsible management of the government, maintaining the values of the American people and maintaining the Constitution as consistent as it's been for 249 years. No one voted to go to direct fascism. No one voted to destroy the global economy and to take the United States and start pontificating about a philosophy that was disproven in the late 18th century, that tariffs are the way that you're going to make money. Hoover crashed the U.S. economy and created the global Great Depression using the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. Peter Navarro, who's a fraud, convinced Trump that this was awesome. Listen, the presidency of the United States is not a game. This is a man who also controls, by the way, 5,000 atomic bombs. And because he is now wrecking the system, he's wrecking the values of the country, literally looting the government, not only that, the most corrupt government in U.S. history, because he is making money himself personally off of the U.S. government, his relationships, and the information that he knows. There's no other place but down from here. So don't, the funny thing is, it's dull Joe Biden, good old guy. People loved him. For the most part, because eggs went up from $2.50 to $3. We've got eggs pushing $6 and 10 to 15 in some markets. So if it's about economic management, then this is an absolute disaster. Again, if you want to say it's medicine, that medicine appears to be 100 microgram fentanyl patches that he's licking, and that's going to kill everything that we have.
Malcolm,
and that's me being objective.
You've got a fairly clearly a pessimistic view of what is going on in your own country. I'm an objective onlooker to this. Look, it's 100 days. This guy does not want to crash your economy. Why would a president want to crash the economy? It's a crazy, self-inflicting, stupid thing to do. He doesn't want to do that, clearly. He wants a third term, this man. It might be a chaotic plan. It might be unconventional. This guy does not want to crash the economy, and he speaks still on behalf of many, many Americans with the agenda of common sense. The borders are looking like they've never looked before. As Mr. Trump said, you didn't need a change of policy. You just needed a change of president.
Look, the border situation is going to be what it is, right? We are a nation of immigrants. We've been taking in immigrants. You could say that little bit down there's better because half of his philosophy comes from the movie Sicario, Night of the Soldier, and not anything to do with what his advisors have been telling him, what U.S. military tells him, what intelligence tells him. None of this makes sense. He is working in such a way that he's literally taking a wrecking ball to the Constitution and the values. 77 million people voted for Donald Trump. If you aggregate the people that voted against him, it was 78 million. He won because of the archaic electoral college system. But let me tell you something. 69 million people didn't even bother to vote. So they didn't vote for this. And now you see the polls at 100 days are showing the country hates this man. And you're saying it's unconventional and it's interesting. Yes, the Blitz was unconventional and interesting. The bombing of Coventry was unconventional and interesting. World War II could be put in that exact same category. But as an intelligence professional, I wouldn't care if this were Burundi or Burma. If I were to watch this from any leader, my initial assessment would be he doesn't know what he's doing. There is about to be a massive economic and political crash, and this could lead to the lives of American citizens and allied citizens who are going to die from this chaos. And it's already happening. Not to mention the destruction of the norms of the American people, including, by the way, arresting judges. The judiciary is an independent, co-equal branch of the United States government as indicated in the Constitution. He doesn't apparently believe in the Constitution, which is why he didn't put his hand on the Bible when he swore his oath.
I'm going to put you down as a floating voter, Malcolm, I think, based on all of that. Listen, it's lovely to get your passion on these things. Malcolm Nance, former US Navy intelligence officer, author of The Plot to Betray America as well. He doesn't pull any punch. There he is. I mean, that's his view, very different to Michael Graham's. You can argue that one all day long. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? Our last guess, categorically no. Michael Graham saying, actually, I mean, the jury's still out, but it's looking pretty good. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000.
obviously the voltage is different in Spain. It's a bit less than the UK, I think. So we do have the odd outage now and again. It's not unusual.
Yeah.
And as people who have rented holiday apartments know that quite often things trip in Spain if you put 2 or 3 devices on.
Yeah.
So it's just part of life. But then it dawns on you, you just can't do anything, anything at all. And neither your neighbours, and you have no news. I mean, it's scary. And no one keeps these transistor radios, the old things we used to have with the big fat batteries. No one keeps those anywhere. And in fact, the few that were available was sold out across Spain within an hour.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Stephen in Surrey, if tariffs are so destructive and evil, why does every country in the world impose tariffs on the USA? Yeah, I mean, the USA was already imposing some tariffs. I mean, it wasn't a tariff-free thing, but yeah, you're right, Simon. I mean, it's Stephen, sorry. These aren't entirely... Donald Trump didn't invent tariffs, is the point. John says, happy birthday, talkTV. The presenters are brilliant and straight-talking. Keep up the excellent shows. Yes, apparently it's a year since we came back upstairs to this studio after we did the TV thing downstairs for a little bit. There's a whole Netflix show in that as well. And Brian says, I think it's clearly obvious Trump is being played by Putin. But my further suspicion is that the two of them are doing a deal over Ukraine. Putin gets 20% of the land, plus recognition over Crimea. Trump gets hugely valuable mineral access. Ultimately, Ukraine is going to be the loser in all of this. The West should have stepped in before the invasion ever started, when Putin built military field hospitals on the border, plus hundreds of thousands of troops, and we actually believed it was just a military exercise. And he was not going into Ukraine. Anyone with a brain could have seen it was a preparation for an invasion. Brian, thank you very much for that great analysis. Over to you, Georgina, down in London. What have you got for us? Donald Trump, Georgina. You heard what our last guest said. He was off the scale angry.
Well, do you know what? I'm his nemesis here, because Malcolm Vance needs to take a Valium. He's going to give himself a nosebleed. He's got Trump hysteria. That's why, listen, this is why Trump's in the Oval Office, Ian, and Malcolm's talking from a back room in his house, OK? Trump's first 100 days have been eventful, to say the least. He would have got my vote purely for the illegal migration remedy alone. He saved billions of dollars by dodging prior corrupt government-funded organisations. So he saved billions there. He said he'd put America first and its people, and that's exactly what he's done. Listen, he isn't perfect, and he occasionally puts his foot in it, like we all do. You point at a politician or a human being that hasn't. You know, this tariff, the tariff thing that he's got going on at the moment, well, you've got to, you know, take into consideration that other countries have been taking advantage of America with tariffs while the Democrats were in power. And, you know, they've lost a lot of money. So by giving the tariffs now and having tariffs, it's helping not only bring revenue into the United States, but also he's encouraging manufacturing, because if they manufacture there, they're not going to get tariffs. In his presidency, he probably won't see the full benefit of this, as it takes time. It's like planting a tree.
But how long, I mean, would we give the Labour government that time, Georgina, because they said they want to grow the economy? How long would you give them?
Well, I wouldn't give them 5 minutes. They've shown me exactly the power of them. And let me tell you, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. These people can't even tell the truth, Ian. So let's just move on quickly. Like I've said about Trump, it's a very selfless thing that he's done with the tariffs, because he really isn't going to see the benefit of this, because it's going to take, I would say, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. But Trump isn't interested in the well-being of other countries. He isn't interested, and why should he be? He's the president of the United States.
Yeah, but there is, to suggest there's no, you know, interactive relationship between countries in the 21st century, I mean, that's clearly not true. There has to be some, right? You've got to, in terms of security and economics.
Absolutely, I'm with you 100%. But what I'm saying to you is that the well-being of his own country and his own people are first and foremost. This is what these people, and, you know, Malcolm Vance was talking through his bottom when he said that the majority of the Americans don't like Trump. They love him. That's why he was voted in on every scale. So
and then he did the classic, didn't he? Go, well, most people didn't vote for him if you add it all. Well, I mean, you can play that game with any president, any leader, prime minister. You can certainly play it with Starmer. Most of the country did not vote for Keir Starmer. That's always the way. The voting system in the States is not perfect. The voting system here is not perfect. I don't believe Mr. Nance would have been making that case had we been talking about Kamala Harris winning the White House, because exactly the same number crunching would have applied. Thank you, Georgina. Back to you. Some passionate views on this. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Welcome back to the home of common sense, 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. So, as we've been discussing, today marks the 100 days in office for US President Donald Trump, with his second term so far shaped by, well, you know the list: tough on immigration crackdowns, trade tariff battles, a sweeping attack on DEI programs, and the dismantling of federal departments. As we sit here today, and remember, what happens in the States has global implications. Is the world a better place because of Donald Trump? More response from you on the way. Also this afternoon, migrants convicted of sexual offences won't be allowed to stay in the UK under new powers, as MPs push to block asylum for anyone on the sex offenders register, whether they arrive with a conviction or commit a crime after getting here. I would say, why stop at that one particular offence, grim as it is. And Keir Starmer has admitted Labour faces a tough set of local elections on Thursday, with potential losses to Reform in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, and 2 key mayoral races, of course, across traditional northern strongholds. Details on that as well. I did have an email, a message, I should say rather, from Nigel, who says, not unreasonably, can there be a bit of chat about the local elections on Thursday and the importance of voting as a nation, as we do seem a bit disillusioned in the act of voting? It's going to be fascinating what happens on Thursday. Yeah, and I'm certainly happy to take calls and comments on that. We live in weird times, and, you know, there are certain rules and regulations as broadcasters that we have to adhere to. They're a little tinsy-wincy bit North Korean in some respects, frankly. I find it bizarre that even on the day of an election, you're not even allowed to say there is an election. That's the rules that are in place. Nonetheless, the news can say it, but editorially, you can't say it. Isn't that slightly mad? And of course, if you mention one candidate in a certain area, you then have to mention all the other candidates that are standing. But the general principle of it, what saddens me, actually, one of the beauties of working here on Talk is that not just us that work here and present and produce, but you guys who take part in, who comment, are engaged in the debate. Clearly, Nigel, who sent me that message, is engaged in the debate. What I fear is that so many of our fellow countrymen, brackets, that includes women, by the way, are not engaged in this debate, and certainly not at local level, less so at local level. And yet there are some really compelling arguments that it's at the local level where things are more, arguably more important, certainly to a lot of communities. So there is disillusionment in democracy and voting, and certainly who could name their local councillor? Who could? I mean, I'm getting leaflets through the door at the moment, so I can, you know, I can't even remember the. Yeah, no, not really. I can't. Not off the top of my head. So yes, there is. I don't know, a little bit of fatigue syndrome, it seems. Has it ever been any different? What percentage of the population engage in this stuff? Is it something as grim as 20%? Not who vote, but I mean, you know, who are concerned about it, who think about it. Maybe cost of living crisis and other things sort of take all the arguments about it away into areas that people feel are more important, but I'm certainly happy to take comment on it. This one comes in from Kate, who says, I'm a single issue voter. Trump would have got my vote for his stance on women's issues. Your guess was deranged. His eggs and judges rant was hysterical. Judges that break the law are not above the law, says Kate. And one in from Neil, who says, Malcolm was spot on. The only people to get anything from this presidency will be Donald Trump and his cronies. Stick him in a box with Keir and the cabinet to complete the toolbox. It's interesting you say that, because Keir, wasn't Keir the son of a... Yeah. Let's get a word on the big stories of the day. Will Jones is the editor at The Daily Sceptic. Will, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you with us. It's the big 100 days. I keep repeating this line. 100 means nothing, really. It's an irrelevant number, but it's a nice rounded number, and one we all tend to focus on when somebody hits the 100. Could be their age, could be anything. 100 days in office it's worth a look at how somebody's doing after 100 days, isn't it? And, you know, Mr. Trump does divide the room, but how are you assessing his journey so far, his century?
Well, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, hasn't it? A bit of a roller coaster. He really hit the ground running with all those executive orders, well over 100 of them within hours, within days of the inauguration. And we've seen him dismantling the net zero, withdrawing from Paris agreement. We've seen the Doge and the efficiency drive. We've seen the tariffs, of course, hugely impactful, hugely divisive, and causing real impact on his popularity ratings as well, which he will not be appreciating, that and the markets. He will, I imagine, say that this is the short-term pain for the long-term gain, which obviously remains to be seen. But it's been a real, I think a lot of people who have been supporters of Trump's would say it's been a real mixed bag. Really impressed they have been with his anti-woke, his clampdown on DEI, his going to war with the universities, with Harvard, and the universities, really clamping down on all that discrimination against white people and Asians, of course, as well. And all that we've seen that he's been doing, but also he goes in with his horns. His horns brandished, and he goes into battle with strong words. We've seen his stance on Ukraine, very divisive. We've seen his tariffs, very divisive. He's a very divisive figure, and even some of his fans have been saying, "Well, this is not necessarily what I would approve of, or what I would hope for or sign up for." So I think it's been quite a mixed bag. But I think the jury is out on a lot of it. We need to see, will he actually achieve any kind of peace in Ukraine? Will it be a recognisably just peace? Will be the price that he manages to extract be worth paying, if he manages it at all? And will his tariff and America First economic policy pay off? I think we're all looking to see what's going to happen, and whether he can pull it out, pull those things out, so that he can get the votes, election results that he needs next year at the midterms and going forward.
Absolutely. And it's, as you say, the jury is out on the economic thing. I mean, I fully expect Mr. Trump to change his mind on some of those tariffs again, because he's done that a few times so far, and he'll keep doing that until it kind of suits wherever he's trying to get to. Somebody who knows more about economics will be able to tell me whether, he's playing this curious game of 4D chess. Maybe he is. But he's certainly put America really back on the map. There's no doubt about that. And I think the DEI stuff, the woke stuff, the wastage in government, I don't think that's irrelevant. I know it's not something that touches everybody's life on a day-to-day basis, but it's about the common sense agenda, isn't it? And I think there is a real appetite, a real sense in Western countries. It's not just specific to America. We know we have it over here. And when I read stories about France, Germany, they've got a PhD in this kind of nonsense. That you look at this and think, goodness me, yeah, we need a recalibration, because the world has lost its mind. We've got curious, you can't identify what a woman is, and if you want to say what one is, you might go to jail for that. If you say something that isn't agreeable to someone on Facebook, you might go to prison for that as well. All sorts of weird pronouns on the end of your emails, and goodness, this stuff isn't just a kind of hors d'oeuvre to bigger issues. These are quite central to the kind of topsy-turvy world we found ourselves living in.
Definitely, and the return of common sense has been really one of the big strengths of Trump coming back in. We had such an activist and radical far left, really, certainly extreme left government in the Biden on these cultural issues, that Trump really has rode the wave of the swing back against that. And many people who would be opposed to him for lots of other reasons, many feminists, for example, are really rooting for him on that agenda in particular. And of course, we've seen the Supreme Court judgment in this country as well. We see that pushback which against that woke agenda, especially in terms of gender ideology, but also in America more broadly against the DEI and the race-based anti-white initiatives that are being pushed back, rolled back. Is the return of common sense is what's really being welcomed.
And I was just to interject on that point, Will, and I've given this example a couple of times. It's just one of many you could give. It's the kind of language that politicians speak, and I was, reminded of this when there was a story a couple of weeks ago of the parents who'd written some things on a WhatsApp group, and they ended up with 6 coppers outside their house. You'll be familiar with the story, and got arrested as well. Yvette Cooper was on the TV, a day or so after that happened, and she spoke in that kind of, oh my God, I'm so fed up with this stuff. She spoke in that sort of pre-rehearsed, SPAD-advised, press release type cant, which is, well, I don't know enough about this case, and, clearly something's gone wrong, and it would be good to investigate, blah, 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 cliche after cliche, vacuous platitude after vacuous platitude. If that was in the States, Donald Trump would have gone, this is crazy. Whoever's behind this should be fired. No one should get arrested for saying something on a WhatsApp group. This is an absolute nonsense. I want to hear Yvette Cooper speak like that. I want to hear Keir Starmer say stuff like that so I can believe him.
Yeah, we've got a real problem with common sense and free speech in this country, haven't we?
100%.
The Supreme Court judgment came in the teeth of what this current Labour administration and the politicians involved in that have been saying. And also, if we're honest, in other parties as well, Conservatives, especially many of them, signed up to this gender ideology nonsense. We want to hear more common sense. Keir Starmer really down in the polls, new poll out today showing Reform are really riding ahead now, 26% I believe versus 23% to Keir Starmer's Labour. I mean that's incredible. And again, Reform, they're the being seen as the protest party, the party of common sense, the party of pushing back against the failure of the mainstream parties on this issue and other issues. Immigration, obviously, a major one. And we're really seeing that pushback because people are wanting politicians to speak common sense and not just garble their words and just look to see what their activists want them to say, but just to speak to the common man and woman in the street and to say what they want to hear. And then to take action, or that's one of the other problems as well, of course, is that some politicians have been keen to say what they want to hear, what they think people want to hear, but action has been lacking. And the public, I think, are desperate for politicians who will not just listen and say what they want to hear, but take that action that actually sorts out free speech, gets rid of ridiculous anti-science gender ideology, closes the borders to illegal immigrants and clamps down on illegal immigration. People who are listening to their concerns about the cost of living, the housing shortages, all of this, energy prices, all of this, and actually takes action and stops not listening or just saying what they want to hear.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Keir Starmer has, if nothing else, at least acknowledged what might be happening on Thursday. He said, Labour faces a tough challenge. I think somebody at the weekend, might have been Pat McFadden, who said that Labour are going to get a kick in the head, which was a far more honest way, I think, of assessing this. And what's interesting about Thursday, based on the polls at the moment, Will, is that this isn't just about local elections. Look, lots of governments, when they're either half a year in or halfway through, whatever, get a kicking locally. That's happened before. But there's more to this one, isn't there? Because we've got a by-election going on in Runcorn. We've got mayoral elections as well. And even those areas, it looks as if Reform, again, based on the polling, could hoover up significantly. This is a big problem for Keir Starmer.
Yeah, big headache for him. And he hasn't even very tellingly, he hasn't even visited the Runcorn constituency. It's a tradition for the Prime Minister to visit the constituency at least of the first by-election of their tenure, which is this one of the first ones, and he hasn't visited because it's not looking good. 14,000 majority just last July was what the Mike Ainsbury managed to get, and that has certainly been overturned, and it looks like it will be enough, and Reform are running ahead. It's hard to tell with polls on the local level, small numbers, of course, but it does look like they're going to take that. And also the Doncaster mayoral election, 10,000 votes majority 4 years ago for the Labour candidate, and it's looking again like Reform are on track to take that as well. That's for local issues, of course. The by-election reflecting national issues, but all of this is reflecting national issues, as they inevitably do. I mean, we might wish and hope that local elections were based on local issues, and ideally they would be. But, of course, we all know that what's going on here is a rejection of the main parties that have failed. The Conservatives failed for 14 years, and now Labour have come in promising change, and people, it seems that enough traditional Labour voters were willing to give them another try after 14 years out of power, give them the chance. Keir Starmer completely blown it in the last year, less than a year. And now a lot of them are just saying, "Oh, that's it. I'm giving up. We've got to try something else. Got to try something new." And they're doing that on the national level, and they're doing that on the local level.
Just very briefly, final one. It's the old sugar tax. It's back on the agenda. Extraordinary when this happens, Will, because they've done it before. I think the Tories did it with Coca-Cola and fizzy drinks, and now Rachel Reeves is heading for your milkshake. Maybe it's because she doesn't want one thrown over her while out campaigning. That seems to be what's some protesters like to do. Don't advise it, by the way. It's not a good thing. Milkshakes and yoghurt drinks, which could raise prices by up to 24p a litre. Not sure if there's any evidence anywhere on planet Earth, Will, that tells you that a sugar tax makes a nation less obese.
Definitely not. I mean, you only have to look at the statistics. The rate of obesity in this country literally didn't go down. It didn't just carry on rising. It accelerated after 2018 when the sugar tax on fizzy drinks was brought in. So there is absolutely no evidence of it making anything better. It just means that our drinks are now stuffed with sucralose and other chemicals instead of sugar.
Yeah, apparently that's all right if you do that. It's just the sugar that's the problem.
Exactly, yeah. These are worried about ultra-processed foods, supposedly, and yet here we are stuffing it with chemicals and saccharin. And what happened to Rachel Reeves's promise not to raise taxes on working people? What is
there
this?
It is.
Not a tax on working people. Taxing milkshakes. What will she think of next?
Yeah, what they can don't ever take away our Nesquik. That's what I say. Will, thank you. Will Jones is the editor of The Daily Sceptic. Thank you to him. Over to you. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Well, we are allowing it to happen, and it's not just Datchet. I mean, there are so many towns up and down the country that I'm afraid have been at least temporarily ruined by illegal immigration and indeed sort of semi-legal migration, by which I mean people coming over on false pretenses. They do manage to rustle up the paperwork, but they're just flooding areas and performing only cash in hand jobs, you know, bringing over relatives.
So almost 24 hours without electricity. That's quite something.
24 hours it took. Exactly. We've used the little blackouts here. They last for an hour maybe, and you normally get some sort of warning coming through, but never that everything has gone.
Well, hold on a minute. You're used to blackouts. So last time I looked, Spain's a first world country. Why do they have blackouts regularly?
But we do. We've lived in Spain for 15 years, and we do get blackouts. It does happen. We are used to it, but not for that length of time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, this one from Donald, not that one, who says, sorry, it's Wayne in Leicester, says one thing everyone can thank him for, this is Trump's 100 days, is for his drill, baby, drill. Thanks to him, oil is down to £70 a barrel, 14.3% down on this time last year. I just paid $1.29 a litre for petrol, and apparently the last time that was the case was way back in January 2015. Is that right? Wow. I paid $1.39 yesterday. That was on a kind of busy road kind of petrol station. I think it's $1.35 around the corner at Tesco's. One here doesn't say who it's from. As much as I love your show, I've never been moved to contact you. But that US intelligence guy just dumped a negative rant about President Trump. Typical Democrat, they offer nothing, but Trump sucks. Yeah, I'm interested to see if Trump can pull it off over a few years, not 100 days. How dare he compare the first 100 days to the Blitz our parents suffered as civilians in the 1940s. Wash your mouth out and show some respect, fella, to a country that spent everything plus a generation of young men and 40,000 plus ordinary civilians to stand in front of the Nazi war machine. Passionately put. Because he did. He said, no, that's just like, that chaotic that is going on. And he made those comparisons. Thank you for that. Andrew is in Hertfordshire on Trump. What are you thinking, Andrew? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Crackerjack of a show. I heard towards the man that you had on, although he went sort of shock jock and started raging.
Yeah.
The reality of Trump is that this policy is not thought through in any way, shape or form. And you can see that in what he said about the deliveries arriving by shipping. At the end of the day, the Chinese manufacture items that Americans want to buy or add value to, then resell. And they're not turning up because the Chinese aren't selling to the American market. He never thought that would happen. The reality is there's going to be nothing on the shelves, and that will destroy this mad tariff attack on the world.
Is it? Do you sense, Andrew, because he made that point that the Walmart stores, the shelves will be empty. Can you imagine it being as bad as that? Literally, like there's nothing to see.
Yeah, because they've stopped shipping on the shipping lanes. And it's been brilliant articles in the Financial Times, Ian. And the reality is when that happens, where do you go? Everything comes from China. It's not on the shelves. You've got nothing. And in relation to Starmer's done the dumb thing in that he's aligned himself with the EU. So what Trump will do is start to hit other people because other than the girls and the immigration, which is really good, he actually is not that bright. And the people around him, it's the king's new clothes, Hans Christian Andersen. You can see it play out. They're telling him it's great. It's actually not, Ian. And the oil price from your last caller or last statement, that's so interesting and so true. He's driven the price of oil down.
Yeah. Would that have been his intention when he started making the proliferation of announcements?
No, he perceived that they would drill, they'd make energy cheap there, and then everything would be manufactured there and they'd export. But if you take in the building that you're in now, you remember when you moved across to it, how long it took to get that up and running?
Yeah.
To go from a brownfield site to a factory is a 6-year ramp. And then you have to get the people and train them.
Yeah.
And Apple aren't coming from China to America, they're going to India. So he really has fouled this up.
Well, it's interesting you say that because on that specific point about Apple, where I can't remember Pete Hesketh, one of the big players in the economics team, made that statement that iPhones should be made in America. And of course, you haven't got to ask many tech journalists who knows a little bit about how this works. In fact, you haven't got to know very much. Will tell you that America simply couldn't do that. They couldn't do it at the price. They couldn't do it because of union issues. There's loads of reasons. They'd never get through.
No, skilled workers. I could come there, they could get me on, but I'm not a skilled journalist. They haven't got the skills in America to do it, leaving aside those other issues.
Yeah.
And if you look at the UK, look at wool. We got sheep, we got wool. We could actually make the items, but it would be so expensive to do it because of the cost of labour.
100%. Yeah.
And then we don't have the skills. So America works on quarters. The president goes in on the 1st of January. This is about America, the first quarter. So all companies will now report results. That's what you want to look at, Ian. And you'll see they're all down. And then they'll give their forecast, which will be negative. And then the stock market will fall. So he really has... He's scored an own goal. I've got more confidence in Tottenham Hotspur Football Club than I've got in him, and that's saying something.
Even after the weekend.
Oh, shambolic, wasn't it?
It was an annihilation, mate. But listen, you're right, I think, Andrew, here on this point. And the confusing thing is, and the sad thing really, is that the country that has done best out of a kind of, if you like, global, I know the word global is a dirty word, but in this respect, it's in context. The country on the planet that's done best out of the global economy has been America. They've done really well out of it. They don't want to be monkeying around too much with that. They've done well because of Apple is an American company, the Super Dream is an American company, all that delicious taxation pours into Capitol Hill because of Apple. But they just don't make them there. They make them somewhere else. That arrangement has worked just fine. And as it has for the automotive industry, where not all cars are, despite what they think, are made in America, they've done really well out of it. So to dismantle that is somewhat confusing.
Yeah, think about it. Wherever we used to have really good manufacturing in the middle of the country, the black country, with textiles. But then we had the Children and Young Persons Act, and they said we can't actually work these people like that. So we exported all that to Asia, where it goes on, and we pretend to turn a blind eye to it. And that's the reality of America. They needed cheap labor. They went to places, China, people.
Oh, and Andrew's line just, it really was a sort of sizzling out sound effect there. Like a firework going out. And he was on fire there. Andrew, thank you. If you are still listening, you weren't cut off or anything. Your line just got the better of us. On local elections, Johanna in Salisbury says, I'm well engaged with the local council. Lib Dem person asked me to vote for. I asked when he would be showing me his water slide and hobby horse tricks. He was unimpressed. The Conservative person asked me to help out and join the council. I said they couldn't cope with me telling them a few home truths. No sight so far of the new Labour candidate, but I'm on good terms with the retiring guy who I would never vote for him anyway. I love that. It's almost like a gag, isn't it? The Lib Dem came to the door and said this. Then a Conservative came to the door and said, and on it goes. Those that do local election stuff, it's like volunteering in any capacity. Is the older I get, the more impressed I become by people who give up their time for nothing or fight battles that don't have any, there's no great hype. You don't become famous by being a sort of local town councillor. A few of your mates will know about it down the pub. Once in a while, somebody will stop you in the high street to complain about the drains or the dog poo. But generally speaking, and for some, by the way, it's an attempt to go further up the ladder to Westminster. So fair play to anyone who gives it a go and pounds the streets and delivers the leaflets and does all of that. But it's a tricky... I don't know how many people engage in local politics. How important is it to most people? Yes, there are some who could name the entire cabinet of their county or even their local authority. But I would say they're few and far between. 0344 499 1000. Are local elections just a protest vote in that respect? Your responses on that too. We are going to talk about migration, sex offenders to be barred from gaining asylum. Stephen Wolfe will join us in a couple of moments' time. It's 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Ian says your caller Georgina is comical. She says the Labour government are liars and Trump isn't. Brackets, he's a sociopath, and calls him selfless and interested in his people. It's hilarious, says Ian. It's a democracy. People have their own thoughts. Kenny in Edinburgh says, can you please, like you did yesterday, call me Big Kenny from Edinburgh? My wee brother was watching when you said this. Although he's younger than me, he's a physically much bigger guy. But you saying that nearly made him cry like a wee lassie. And it was very funny. Please, can you say it again? I want to see my wee brother roaring and greeting. I don't know his name. In fact, I don't think it matters because there's a pecking order here, fella, all right? And do not, whatever you do, argue with Big Kenny, okay? Big Kenny, he's not to be argued with, only to be listened to. It's that simple. Let's move to this story. And there's a lot around here. Migrants convicted of sexual offences will no longer be able to claim asylum in the UK. I mean, you might think, well, how was it ever a case that they were? MPs are pushed to expand the rule to include anyone on the sex offenders register, not just those sentenced to more than a year in prison. Meanwhile, small boat crossings have surpassed 10,000 in 2025. We predicted this on Friday's show, the earliest point in a year that this milestone has ever been reached. And in Parliament, Liberal Dem MP Vera Hobhouse, Liberal Democrat MP Vera Hobhouse even, is backing a controversial campaign to give the vote to over 4 million non-citizens living in Britain, sparking accusations of election rigging. Well, it's accusations of idiocy, frankly. I mean, these people really are bonkers, right? Let's speak with Stephen Wolfe, Director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, also a lawyer too, and knows his way around these kind of stories. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I mean, let's just start with the first one. I mean, I said it there in the intro. I think, you know, if your philosopher's favoured alien was listening to this conversation, they'd think, hang on a sec, what? So sex offenders were previously allowed to stay, but now they're not going to be. But that's how we've been rolling for the last few years.
It has indeed, and it's really part of the whole shocking legal and immigration system that we've created as a consequence of our membership of the European Courts of Human Rights and allowing Article 8 in particular to be extended so much that as a consequence of legal cases and being embedded in common law, almost anything has been permitted. And so now we have all these different levels of silly kind of legal issues that have occurred, that people are just asking the simple question, how did this happen? And the reality is it happened because we joined the European Courts of Human Rights. Lawyers extended the kind of principles, judges enforced that, and it became embedded in our common law. And if you want it to go away, all those aspects need to go away too.
So the situation as it is today, you could come over from another country, you might have served 10 years in jail as a convicted paedophile in another country, but you've come to the UK, and then you could, while you're here, you could claim you want to remain here. You might have come with a legitimate job, regardless of the case. The fact that you had a 10-year prison sentence under your belt for a grim offence like that would not have automatically got you banned. In fact, it wouldn't have got you banned at all, I think I'm right in saying, because you wouldn't have served time in prison in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't give you an automatic ban, because what the current law would say is that we need to, or rather the Home Office would need to present its case. We would then review Article 4 of your human rights, your rights to a family life, your rights to fair trial, within the basis of the European Courts of Human Rights. And as a view of that, you could then argue, look, if I go back to my country, yes, I was a rapist here, but if I was returned to Pakistan, then my human rights would be destroyed because I'd be hunted, I'd be pursued, I'd be ignored. And of course, then the courts accept that here, because not the individual, but because the precedent has already been set many, many times. And the way to deal with it, Ian, now is, and I know and I appreciate that the Labour Party have come out today said they're going to review the European Court of Human Rights in respect of issues like this and in cases like this, and I welcome that. But once again, this is tinkering at the edges. And of course, once you tinker, then all it will do is open up another gap for lawyers to be able to use it. And if you've got judges that are favorable to it, then they'll accept it too.
100%. And of course, the case of the example I gave, let's say it's an Iranian paedophile that did serve 10 years in an Iranian jail, came over here, got himself some sort of residency. Then someone says you're going to be deported, and of course his argument would be, well, I can't be deported because what I did means that if I go back to Iran now, I'm high profile because of this case, and therefore I'll be beaten to death in the streets, or the government will imprison me again. So, and that's because of being a member of the European Court of Human Rights, that he would be able to utilise those articles in order to remove. I mean, it's so bonkers. You'd think a 10-year-old would be able to work this out, but that's the system we've been living under. I mean, it's utterly mad.
It is utter madness, and it's incredulous to those of us who became lawyers, looking at the common law and the rule of law as being something that we are avowedly a believer in. I certainly am. I believe in my legal system. I believe that generally we're not out there as lawyers either for the prosecution or defence, for acting for any particular individual, deliberately to overrule the politicians' viewpoints. And I think most judges do it correctly. But you are tied between the common law as it's implemented. You are literally tied into it. And so the only way now is for Parliament to make a strong decision and say, look, we feel that our membership of the European Court of Human Rights is no longer working. We have a choice: leave it or try and amend it. I doubt this latter will work. And if you do, how do we then amend our own legislation, which is the Human Rights Act and our own common law, to ensure that this does not happen? And I set out very clearly before that it's leaving the European Court of Human Rights, the Human Rights Act, various other pieces of legislation, including immigration rules and policy procedures. And if you get that, then you can start dealing with the common law system. And that way, that paedophile, from whatever country it is, would no longer be able to rely on any of our legal systems to protect him. We should be looking after the interests of those people they hurt and damaged and were criminally liable for, rather than their own human rights.
Indeed. And what's interesting, just a final point on this specific story, Stephen, is that it's amazing we're only talking about sex offenders here. I mean, I would extend this into all sorts of areas of criminality, but obviously the one that gets the headlines, the one that Yvette Cooper has announced, was sex offenders, as if she's some kind of hero to solution to this problem when she's endorsed and ticked every box that's allowed this system to happen over her career. And yet here we are, just really hypothecating one case when there's many. I think we could make the same argument over.
Yes, there are many different types of criminal actions that you would argue, and I would certainly say that due to the way that drugs has such an impact on our society and families, and when you look at families who've lost their children to the evil aspects of drug taking and what it can do, then those people involved in that level should also be considered. Yeah. And many more of the people will have different views on this. But the reality is we should be looking at a general legal principle that says if you have committed a serious crime, we can define what a serious crime is, you can no longer rely on the protections that are given to you under the European Court of Human Rights, Article 4, and that we should be able to deport you if we believe that that is in the interests of public safety.
100%. Just a word while we're with you, Stephen. Boat crossing surpassing 10,000. We predicted this on Friday. We knew it was going to be a fairly decent weekend weather-wise. God knows what's going to happen this week, by the way. It's like Bermuda out there at the moment. So I'm imagining many more people will be on the way. But it is the earliest point in any year that this milestone has ever been reached. So, yes, it's a rounded number, as if 9,000 was OK. But it's nonetheless a rather grim direction of travel and a big headache, one would assume, for this government.
Absolutely. They are certainly not stopping the boats using Rishi Sunak or stopping the gangs using Keir Starmer's phrases. And we are on a position where we're looking like we're above 40 to 42% higher than last year. that would indicate a good level of 50 to 60,000 coming across. And the impact of that large number of people are being affected all across the country. We see the company Serco, as we've watched in the press recently, going up and down the northwest of England, through the Midlands, to the poorest areas of our country, asking for landlords to give up their houses for 5 years and ensure that you can put asylum seekers into them, and they would not have to pay any costs. Only the taxpayer would via Serco. And I have now deemed Serco to be a leech leviathan on the kind of nature of British people, because they are effectively behind the scenes removing taxpayers' money to ensure poverty in those areas. Because what will happen? As soon as the housing stock has declined because it's filled with asylum seekers, people who are on the poorer levels of income, who are renting accommodation, will have nowhere to go, and anything that's left, that will face sky-high rises in rent.
100%.
This is obscene.
Yeah, and again, back to what I said at the beginning, you'd think a 10-year-old could work this one out. It's not hard to work out the problem, but for some reason it seems to have jumped several hurdles in government and in cabinet meetings, unfettered somehow. And this one of those stories that you kind of read and go, I'll have to read that again. I must have got something wrong. Vera Hobhouse, the Lib Dem MP, who's backing a campaign to give the vote to over 4 million non-citizens living in Britain. I don't know where to start on this, Stephen. Given the kind of climate we are in, what do you think Ms Hobhouse is thinking on this? Or maybe she just assumes that 4 million will all be Lib Dem voters?
Well, I think first and foremost, this is about rigging a potential vote back into the European Union, because the vast majority of those people that they're looking at will be EU citizens who've been granted the opportunity to live here. That's certainly the numbers that we've seen, because they were almost double the amount that the government said were EU citizens who could stay and remain in the UK after we left the European Union under Brexit. And secondly, I think that there is always a view that within the circles of the left, and numerically they are quite right in so many ways, that those who come to the country from foreign nations, first of all, do vote more towards the left. They vote for socialist parties and they vote for Liberal Democrats. So that's the idea. It's to ensure there is a form of vote rigging in the future, to ensure a conservative or right-wing party cannot take any control across the country.
Yeah, I sense it is as simple as that. Listen, Stephen, always a pleasure. Very thorough stuff. Thank you for your time, Stephen Wolfe, Director for the Migration and Economic Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, I beg your pardon, and of course, lawyer as well. Thank you to him. Response from you on that one. I think the Vera Hobhouse story, who's backing a campaign to give the vote to over 4 million non-citizens living in Britain. It depends how you define non-citizen, I suppose. I mean, if you've got somebody who, I don't know, lives here for a long period of time but they're not actually a citizen, I think that's a whole different thing, isn't it, to somebody hopping over the channel on a boat and getting the vote. But nonetheless, I was not surprised. She's a Liberal Democrat. That's the kind of thing that gets these people out of bed in the mornings. Bill in Wales says, great show. American car plants are functioning well under full capacity. Not difficult to increase, functioning well under full capacity. Not difficult to increase car production by a significant amount. I suspect many plants can increase production in America very quickly, and they will. And of course, that's one of the theories of the whole tariff thing, is that you get America building again. You kind of almost force people to say, look, yeah, the cars coming over from Europe, they're really expensive. They've got 25% added on top of them. In that case, Chrysler, or whatever the heck it is these days, get building. Go build some stuff. Make it happen. And so you create a dominant and a bigger and a more fruitful and a more economically successful domestic car market. That's the theory. And some people thought they could do that with iPhones. Why are we sending it all out to China? Because, China pay about 3p an hour for people to make some of the stuff that assemble the phones. And that ain't ever going to work. And if it was going to work, it might take you about 15 years to realise it or to get to that stage. Betty says, ignorance of some of your callers is astounding. Apple have been moving factories to India for the last 3 to 5 years. Most Chinese factories already moving to Vietnam and Cambodia to keep prices down. Cheap oil, cheap dollar. Shipping ban is to force private industry to build ships in the US to reduce service and build costs for the US Navy. If that happens, Bet, we will watch with interest. 0344 499 1000. Anything you've heard so far, you're welcome to chip in. Our lines are open. It's 10 to 3. This is Talk.
It's no wonder people like Gary Lineker emerge from these kinds of, organisations feeling like he's pretty much untouchable. Only on the BBC would Gary Lineker, who's leaving the BBC, be interviewed by Amal Rajan, who's not leaving the BBC, for the programmes we put out on the BBC.
Oh, there's nothing the BBC loves more than a bit of navel gazing.
Yeah.
I mean, even yesterday's story,
Right.
when the report came out, the report wasn't even published, yet it was briefed to the Today programme, who did the ridiculous headline, basically saying, the BBC understands that the BBC does not have a culture of a toxic culture. It's like, well, what does that even mean?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And some breaking news just come through on my phone. Amazon have delivered me HDMI cable. Thank you very much. Left in a safe place. Let's go to Philippa in Dorset. How are you doing, Philippa?
I'm wonderful, thank you, Ian. It's lovely to speak to you as usual.
And you too. What are your thoughts?
I wanted to speak to you about the ECHR. I don't understand why we're still discussing this, because people voted for Brexit and to get out of Europe for a reason. So we shouldn't be taking any notice of ECHR. We've had Magna Carta and common law since time immemorial, and we're quite capable as a country of writing our own human rights laws. We don't need ECHR. And then also there's the point of what we're paying out for illegal immigrants. We just need to stop it and claw back all this money that's being paid out so that we don't have to make these cuts to public services, to education, to the NHS, to the winter fuel allowance for the elderly, PIP for the disabled. I just think, the money is going in all the wrong places. And also, do our votes mean nothing? The reason why we're also getting these illegal migrants in is because the left want them to vote, and they're not UK citizens, so why should they be allowed to vote? Because we pay our community charge and our poll tax, which gives us the right to vote.
Well,
It's all wrong.
Pretty simple stuff, isn't it, really? I mean, it doesn't even take, I know I keep using this phrase, it doesn't take an expert to work this one out.
No, I know, and I just don't understand where the common sense has gone in our British government. There is no common sense anymore. It's absolutely ludicrous. We're losing our culture, we're losing our heritage, we're losing everything that this country stands for. And I absolutely hate it. I just think it's absolutely diabolical.
But it doesn't take much working out. When they have these meetings in government and they have these meetings, with their kind of officials and advisors and the various departments, someone comes up with this old guff. You might think, you want a leader that's going to go, sorry, that ain't going to work under my watch. That's lunacy. No one will back that. No one with common sense will back that and then do something about it. We don't get that. Listen, great call, Philippa. Thank you very much indeed for that. Don't go away, Janice, with you shortly. Oh, the Voice of Doom. What is it? Day 19 of the Voice of Doom. Day 19 for 19 days, or 18 days, 19 including today. The mystery voice, no one has got it correct, all right? I'm surprised. Remember, you're looking for a politician, literally a politician, a former politician. I can say that much, a former politician. It is not David Cameron, it is not Nick Clegg, it is not George Osborne, it is not Ian Duncan Smith, it is not Jacob Rees-Mogg. I can tell you that there's a few others that keep coming up as well. Here's the question, who is this?
Political decisions were taken.
If you think you know, 87222. Don't phone, because we haven't got prizes or anything at this end all the time. But you can message in. Here's the voice again.
Political decisions were taken.
No voice so far has gone on for this long. We do this feature every day, and sometimes we've had really, really tough voices and thought this is going to go on for weeks, and they've been guessed on day 1 or day 2. For some reason, this one, which is no more obscure or no more high profile either way than any other we've used in the past, completely in the same template of the sort of voice we might choose, has eluded the nation for 18 days. Here's the voice again.
Political decisions were taken.
We'll tell you in about 10 minutes who it is if we get a right answer in that time. The only way to take part is by messaging 87222. Do that now. Let's go back to the phones. Janice in Wakefield. How you doing, Janice?
Not bad, thank you.
Good. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm ringing about the Lib Dems.
Yes.
Wanting to give the think they could give the migrants the vote. I really don't understand that one.
Well, yeah, they're talking about non-citizens, so I don't know whether that means just migrants or whether it means, I don't know, an American who's lived here and worked here for 15 years but can't vote.
Well, that's wrong as well.
Yeah, I guess if you're not a citizen, you can't vote, right?
I wouldn't have thought so, no. That's something that we actually, is part of our, privilege to vote. And I don't think anybody should be given it if they don't actually live here or permanently, or they don't understand our constitution or our heritage.
What about Commonwealth countries? Okay, is it?
Well, if they don't live here, no.
Because I think you can vote, can't you, from a Commonwealth country?
Good grief, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the Commonwealth, isn't it? That's our big gang that we're all in together.
Well,
I don't know. Could I vote? There's Australian elections coming up soon. If I went to Australia, could I vote, Adam, in Australia?
No,
apparently no, I can't.
Wife, you don't know their country.
But Adam, he's from Australia. He's virtually part of the cabinet. That's how it works. It's just not fair.
Yeah, if you're a citizen here and you've been living here a long time and you're used to our ways.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's right, really. It's and a lot of it. I mean, to get back to the migrants for a moment, a lot of them don't even speak English. They won't even understand our way of life. Well, they don't understand our way of life. I don't really.
Yeah, but
think
if you
they
can't
do,
speak
and-
English and you've got no experience, or you've made no contribution to the country, I mean, it seems a bit bizarre that you give somebody the democratic vote, wouldn't you? I mean, that's just a straightforward no. Strange times. Philippa, thank you very much indeed. Philippa in Dorset. This one comes in from Zoe. Says, my local Green Party candidate has just knocked on my door complaining that I have a Reform poster in my window. She said that she does not discuss anything with Reform Party supporters, and when I told her to go away, she said she was becoming distressed at my attitude. To recap, she knocked on my door. Is the world going mad, or is it just me? Can you imagine that? A candidate from another party knocking on the door going, you've got a party, you're supporting another party, how dare you? Oh, I'm not going to engage with you because I don't like that party. Man alive. Troubled times we are living in, indeed. Lots to come in the next section. Remember the number, 0344 499 1000. We will have a word on those blackouts in Spain and Portugal and elsewhere as well. We'll talk to a member of the European Parliament, Jose Ramon Bauza, will join us to tell us more about what's happening down the Balearic Island ways. And more. Plus, of course, the Voice of Doom. Have we got a winner on the Voice of Doom? Here's the voice.
Political decisions were taken.
If you know who that is, come on, we've got to get a winner. 87222. Someone out there knows who it is. That's the number. We'll give you the details and the answer, hopefully, after the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Lots to get through in this hour. Today, by the way, if you haven't been listening so far, marks 100 days in office for US President Donald Trump, with his second term so far shaped by tough immigration crackdowns, trade tariff battles, a sweeping attack on DEI programs, and the dismantling of federal departments. But are you supporting what he's doing? I think the wider question, is the world a better place Because of Donald Trump. He's 100 days down the line. He's got a long way to go yet. Your thoughts on that? Also, an over-reliance on solar and wind is being blamed by some for Europe's biggest blackout, which disrupted cities, transport and hospitals across Spain, Portugal and parts of France. We'll get the latest on that and talk to a couple of guests with differing views on this one in just a moment. And some BBC staff are untouchables who are allowed to get away with bad behaviour and in some cases continue to thrive, a damning new review into the broadcaster has revealed. Oh, there's a big fat list of people who are untouchables. In my industry, I can tell you that much. Certainly not around here. If you muck around, you're kicked out the flipping door. End of story. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Before we carry on, so Voice of Doom, have we got a winner? This was the mystery voice we played you.
Political decisions were taken.
This is the 19th day we've played this voice to try and find out if anybody knows who it is. Can we have another listen?
Political decisions were taken.
These are some of the wrong answers that we've had. Lembit Opik, it is not. Alan Duncan, no. Lord Frost, no. Cecil Parkinson, it isn't. William Hamling. Danny Alexander, no. Kim Darroch, no. Brandon Lewis, no. Alistair Jack, no. In fact, we still haven't got a right answer. Day 20, it's an all-time record. Day 20, tomorrow, the Voice of Doom returns. We might give a further clue tomorrow just to finally get this thing sorted. 20 days. Details coming tomorrow at about 2:45. Now, Spain and Portugal's heavy push for net zero energy left them wide open to Europe's biggest blackout yesterday. Not my words, the words of some experts who claim this to be the case. Tens of millions lost power, flights were grounded, trains stopped, the entire cities saw essential services grinding to a halt. The EU is denying any signs of a cyber attack, but energy specialists are pointing the finger at Spain's reliance on solar and wind, saying it made the grid too fragile. In a moment, we'll be speaking with Andrew Momford from Net Zero Watch. But first, let's speak with Jose Ramon Bauza, former president of the Balearic Islands and member of the European Parliament. Jose, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
It's lovely to have you with us. The lights are mostly on now. Would that be fair?
Yes, we are. We are lucky because, you know, in the islands, Balearic Islands and Canary Islands, even though Ceuta and Melilla, we are absolutely out of these chaotic circumstances. But now, step by step, I think we are starting to recover these strange circumstances. That this is the first time, the biggest ever in the Spanish history, about the energy and the zero disconnection that we have suffered yesterday morning.
Maybe this is a good time for the Balearic Islands to go completely independent. I know that's a separate discussion, but if ever there was a time, now is the time, Jose.
No, but you know, we're still having in my mind where there was president of the island. We made another connection with a cable through the mainland in order to we suffer some, in this case, this connection, we have the supply code. So it is not the case. Unfortunately, the mainland suffered. Portugal, Andorra, and a part of France suffered for this disconnection. It's a huge amount of energy collapsed. But anyway, we are happy, and another important thing, we are trended touristic point, as you very well know. So in this case, even though we are giving our best to our touristic visitors.
Of course, I understand that. Either way, I mean, it's great that the Balearics and, as you say, Canary Islands were able to carry on. But this was absolutely huge, wasn't it? I don't think anybody expected that it would even be possible for any one single thing to knock out such a huge area of essential infrastructure, airports, trains, people stuck in elevators, shopping centres. Goodness me, you couldn't even get a glass of Spanish wine.
Yes, we never thought about that situation happen. Never in our minds. So, but we still don't have any specific idea or message from the president of Spain, the government, or even the authorities. They are saying that they are thinking about and they are taking off the information in order to give us, which has been the possible effect that happened. But what this is a true effect is that given by experts and some colleagues from outside as well. And in the mainland, they're saying as that the main factor that happened is that we have the eolic and the solar energy. They came immediately in such a huge, tremendous, massive sources, and we cannot regulate it. And the nuclear energy is as well incorporated to the net. So the infrastructure were not able, they were not has enough capability to manage this, and it's collapsed. The problem is that we had to think about what we are going to do in the future, but said by the expert that can happen obviously any other time in the future, and any other country. I have been talking with some of my colleagues from Germany, from the Deutschland, Holland, Belgium, that's saying that they were prepared that this should happen in the future because of the collapse and know how to regulate. So what we have to do, at least in Spain, is to try to identify where our collapse point has been suffered, because what is the messages that are bringing to us, I said, never by the government, but as well for the engineers and the experts, and they turn about the amount of energy that we getting from the sources, and we get it back to France. And in France, in some of the points, I think it's in Perpignan, if I'm not true, they collapse as well, and they buried the infrastructure. So, and anyway, it cannot happen in the future again. We have to learn about what we are doing, and we have to know that the eolic energy, and as well the solar energy, and as well the water energy, because it has been we have been during this springtime, we have been suffering a lot of rains, rainy days with a lot of rains and that. So we had to treat it very well, because it can never 60% of the alternative energy collapse at the same time, just in 1 second and a half. So
do you think? I mean, what do you say, Jose, of the view then that it's that Spain's reliance on solar and wind made the system too fragile? What is your response to that, sir?
Well, if we want to do that, there is no problem. But we want to have a look where his infrastructure system is, because we want to have as much solar and much eolic, as much of water energy, of course, but our energy sources with our net infrastructure, they are not prepared, because we cannot regulate it. And as well, the nuclear energy coming from some of our plants, and as well some from France, they were incoming into our system. So that's the way they collapse it. So if you don't have the possibility to regulate it, you have to keep an eye, because maybe we have the best for this kind of infrastructure of energy to be used. It can be the best, but you have as well to have the same balance infrastructures and connections to support it, and if not, to as well to how to say, to storage, because we as well, we don't have any storage plan to be used. So that's a win. Which is the kind of energy that we are getting from the outside, and well, how we can regularize it or not. If you can, how to as well to storage them, because if not, you had to send to another country, and it happened what we saw yesterday morning.
There it is. Jose, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Jose Ramon Bauza, former president of the Balearic Islands, now currently a member of the European Parliament. Thank you to him. Let's get a word from Andrew Montford from Net Zero Watch on this one. Andrew, good afternoon to you. It was undoubtedly a catastrophe. To have anything that can knock out this level of crucial infrastructure over such a wide area, over multiple countries, is clearly extraordinary. I think most of us might have thought, without really knowing, that such a thing isn't really possible in the 21st century. There's stuff in place that protects against that, but apparently not. It wasn't a cybercrime. This question of whether it was to do with the backup, or the lack of backup, really, because of an over-reliance on solar and wind. What is your response to that? And good afternoon, by the way.
Good afternoon. No, I don't think backup is the problem. The thing is, it's to do with the stability of the grid. Grids have faults all the time. Things that are connected to the grid go wrong. And the natural tendency of grids is to fall apart because supply and demand always has to equal on an electricity grid. Yeah. Now, if you have gas-fired power stations, they bring something called grid inertia to the party, which essentially naturally stabilizes the grid. So that if there's a fault, the fault then propagates throughout the grid rather slowly, which means that the grid managers can fix it. The problem is you don't get any inertia with wind and solar. So if you have a grid that's dominated by wind and solar, as the Spanish grid is, then if you get a fault, it's very difficult to contain it. It spreads essentially almost instantaneously in microseconds, and you can lose the whole grid. Now, you then have an added problem of the Spanish grid is connected to the French grid. Now, that's a tricky thing to manage at the best of times. If you get this big fault on the Spanish side, then it'll trip the French side and it'll trip the Portuguese side, which is what we think happened. So, yeah, the problem is to do with wind and solar. We have exactly the same problem here. We have too much wind. We don't have as much solar but as the Spanish do, but we have lots of solar. And our grid is running with very little inertia. That is potentially a huge problem. Now, we saw this back in about 2019. There was a wind farm tripped off the grid and it took out most of the eastern side of England. And, 1 million people or something were cut off there. As we get more wind and solar, this will become a higher risk. The grid managers are trying to do something about it, but it's very, very difficult. You need highly sophisticated electronics to try to deal with it, and nobody's quite sure whether it's really going to work in future.
Yeah. So in principle, there might be a way to address the problem, even if the reliance was predominantly on non-fossil fuel technology. But at the moment, no one's actually come up with it. But we're allowing this technology to kind of run free, as it were, without a backup, which is like kind of having a building without a generator.
Yeah, it's something like that. There are technologies out there that, I mean, they have been deployed and they're out there, and we haven't had problems in the UK since, as I say, I think it was 2019 that we last had a major blackout. But it may be that the instabilities of the grid become too much for it, and we do get problems in future. We have this other problem. A lot of our grid inertia comes from the Drax power station in North Yorkshire, which burns wood chips imported from America, and they're trying to close that down because that's very environmentally unfriendly. But of course, they can't really close it down because we'll lose even more of our inertia, and the grid will become even more unstable. We've got ourselves into a real pickle. Is the general theme here?
Indeed. There's an while you're with us, Andrew, an interesting intervention from Tony Blair. I think we're all aware that every now and again Tony Blair's name crops up, and normally we instinctively begin to gnaw our own elbows when we hear the name. However, on this occasion, it's rather interesting because apparently he's attacked Keir Starmer's net zero plans and called for a radical reset of the government's green agenda. He said it was wrong that people were being asked to make financial sacrifices and changes in lifestyle when they know that their impact on global emissions is minimal. He said politicians must face inconvenient facts that show that any strategy based on phasing out fossil fuels was doomed to fail. Fascinating. And he's an unofficial advisor to the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. I mean, it really was quite a turn up for the books, this new report that the Tony Blair Institute has produced, and Tony Blair's written the foreword. And, my initial reaction to it was, well, where have you been for the last 10 years? He's saying we shouldn't be calling people climate deniers. And people have been saying that for years, and he's never said a thing about it. It may just be that he's detected which way the wind is blowing, and he wants to be on the right side of history. Having said that, the rest of the report was very much in the same vein as everything else we've heard for the 10 years. So it was all about alleged climate crises and emergencies and that sort of thing. So mixed messaging from the Tony Blair Institute, I think was.
Who'd have thought it, eh? Listen, Andrew, thank you for your time. Andrew Montford, Net Zero Watch. It is curious to see, and he's right about, trying to close down Ed Miliband and wood pellet technology. It's, they don't like each other, those two things. Miliband hates all that stuff, loathes it, in fact. And I think, and the China approach is, I'm not the first person to say this, we've said it on this show, which to me just seems like basic common sense. Yeah, we've got some fossil fuel technology and we're not about to just close it down because we desperately need it, and we need it for a number of reasons. Cost is one of them. That certainly is the selling point on the doorstep. And the second thing, of course, is that it absolutely 100% works. So between those two things, China aren't closing it down, but in the meantime, they're going to build a shed load of windmills and stick up solar panels on, anything that resembles a roof. And gradually, the theory goes, you phase one out and the other is working nicely. And by the time you get to that stage, by the way, things like storage and inertia, which are referred to with our earlier guest, you've kind of begun to address all of that. So you don't have a sort of panic, oh, we've got to clear everything out, get your heat pump stuffed in your house, it's going to cost you 16 grand, a solar panel on your roof, that's another 5 grand, you've got to put a windmill on your nan's head to make, money, blah, blah, that's another 2.5 grand. Just do it in synergy, and if it works, everyone would endorse, because we'd all go, yeah, okay, so it's cheaper. Yep, it's going to be cheaper. Brilliant. Kinder to the environment. I don't know anybody who doesn't want to be kinder to the environment. Yep, ticks all those boxes. Fantastic. Thumbs up. We can do it now. What we don't have to do, Ed Miliband, is do it tomorrow, which I think seems to be the problem. It's that level of evangelism around this that is upsetting people, and I think that's Tony Blair's point in writing the forward for this report, although, as Andrew Montford just said, the rest of the report doesn't quite reflect all of that. But there's Tony Blair's words. He said, politicians must face up to inconvenient facts which show that any strategy based on phasing out fossil fuels was doomed to fail. Interesting. He said it was wrong that people were being asked to make financial sacrifices and changes in lifestyle when they know that their impact on global emissions is minimal. They're the words of Tony Blair. Are you endorsing those? Our lines are open, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Well, the tariffs coming down is going to get U.S. products, particularly agricultural products, into other countries that have been keeping us out. And you are seeing, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars of manufacturing being announced, expanded manufacturing in the U.S., companies coming back to the U.S. And we just saw that Apple is going to move their manufacturing from China to India to avoid the tariffs.
How's
So,
that
again,
working out
give it
for
time.
American workers? So they're going to get they're not going to get a job whether it's in India or China, are they?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is from Derek, who says, my daughter got to Barcelona yesterday at 9 a.m, minutes before the blackout. Met her friend, went to the cafes, they were all full. Got on a bus for a 20-minute journey to her friend's flat. Utter gridlocked. Got to the flat at 9 p.m. So arrived at 9 a.m, got to the flat at... that would have killed me. I'd have had to get on. I don't know what I would have done. Green energy working well. Coming here soon under Mad Miliband, says Derek. Thank you for that. Scott in Dorset says, who cares about Trump's 100 days? How useless Starmer is, or how the power cuts across Spain or Portugal. Who the hell is the voice of doom? That's what we want to know. Get Dubois on the phone and he can put us all out of our misery. Well, Nick Dubois, of course, sometimes of this parish, former Conservative MP and presenter here at Talk. Nick, every now and again, texts one of our producers like Finn and says, I think I've got the answer. And Finn gave him some clues. Because he's on the team sheet, he can't really have a go at it. We couldn't announce Nick Dubois as the winner. I mean, imagine saying Julia Hartley-Brewer has won the competition. It would just be a bit weird. So Nick did get it correct, but only after he was kind of given... I've just been told in my ear 10 clues he was given. It wasn't like a little clue, like, oh, think about the early 2000s or something like that. No, he got a lot of clues. And then he got it right. And Nick's got a great brain, of course, encyclopedic on politics. So you are looking for a politician, I can tell you that. And I can tell you now you're looking for a former Labour politician. There you go, I've given the clue the day early. Former Labour politician. Back to the phones. Chris is in Epsom. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, a couple of things. But first of all, I've got to tell you, you made me laugh. I nearly fell off the sofa earlier when you called Nance a floating voter.
That's right, yeah.
He was the most rabid Democrat I've even...
We put him down as an undecided, shall we?
yeah, I think so.
Glad to hear it, Chris. Anyway, what are you thinking about what's happening with Canada?
Well, yeah. And then I've got something on immigration as well. But Carney, who was the chairman of the Bank of Canada, he took over from a bloke called Dodge, right known for a chairman of the bank. But Dodge kept.
So wouldn't you be refused the job based solely on your name?
Probably would nowadays.
It might be one of those active parts of sort of a recognised, everyone agreed that unfortunately discrimination based on your name means you cannot have the job because your name is Mr. Dodge.
Yeah, you might offend somebody.
Yeah.
He kept very strict. Canada's got very strict controls, much better than in England and in America and in the other European countries. They've got one regulatory authority that looks after it all, and they insist on better cash reserves, and they kept them out of for most part, they kept them out of the dodgy contract for differences and all the other investment securities that included the what they call ninja mortgages and the subprime mortgages. So. Yes. And then Carney kept it on. Carney was there from 2008 to 2013, and he kept it the same way and kept it really tight controls. Canada wasn't well publicised, but they never suffered the 2008 financial crisis that America and England and Europe did because of their regulatory controls and because the two chairmen kept tight reins on it. So
it's a house point for Carney in that respect.
Yeah, that's why he got the job at the Bank of England. But, I mean, sometime between leaving that or being there and getting the job at the Bank of England, the globalists got hold of him because he completely changed. Anyway, all of a sudden, Brexit, we were going to lose 500,000 jobs. It was going to be a national disaster. There was this, that and the other. Completely opposite to the way he behaved in Canada. And now he's gone back. So I don't know what they can expect.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't follow. I mean, I followed a little. One of my best mates is Canadian. I followed a little bit of the Canadian kind of elections, but maybe not as much as I should have done. I'm assuming, Chris, that in his campaigning, because obviously he took over from Trudeau and then very quickly announced there's going to be an election quite soon after. He must have done that thing of, and they all do it, he must have tried to tick a few Conservative boxes, bearing in mind he was way behind, or his party was way behind in the polls, to the Conservatives, who are a dead cert. So there was no doubt about it. The Conservatives were back and they were going to win big time. And then, of course, Trump gets in and then all hell breaks loose over the relationship with Canada. But he must at some point, even despite the kind of open goal that Trump gave Carney, on the campaign trail, he must have ticked a few right-wing boxes.
Well, yeah, they all do. I mean, they
whether he means them or not is my point.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, he was definitely ticking the right-wing boxes in his speech afterwards. If you watched it,
yeah,
you know, it was almost we're going to make Canada great again. We're going to
yeah, that's true.
Trump out.
But of course, there were some, you know. I mean, the Conservative leader was seen to be too pally with Trump, wasn't he? That was one of the problems.
Yeah, it was. Our biggest problem, I'll send you a video if you because you actually, I've got to thank you as well, because you picked me up on a post that I put up on X that was wrong.
That's right, yes.
I took it down.
Yeah.
I took it down immediately. I got your message.
I think you put one up this morning as well that might well turn out to be wrong, but that's another story. I wasn't going to pick you up on that.
What, was that
church?
The dinghy?
The church.
Oh,
the church fire.
Yeah, in Wales.
Yeah.
I believe that was true.
I don't think there's been no evidence of who's responsible for it, other than a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old have been arrested, according to police.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, listen, let's not relive it on air, but I was only saying that, Chris, because I genuinely didn't know. And when I saw it oddly yesterday, somebody posted it, but they posted it the other way round, saying, you know, this is fake news, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, I had the opposite. I thought, hang on, you don't know it's fake news. And then I thought, oh, we don't know any news. And I checked it out and talked to our people here. And at the moment, the only line the police have given is that 2 kids have been arrested. Apparently, one of them was arrested because their dad took them to the police station. I don't know if that bit's true or not, but this is social media. Anyway, enough of that, Chris. Were you going to add something else about immigration onto that?
Yeah, I did send you one that is true. There's a film of a orange dinghy arriving on the South Coast beach with about 40 or 50 illegal immigrants jumping off it, shouting Ali Akbar, with nobody there to stop them. There was a couple of English guys that were sunbathing on the beach, and there was 2 guys that had run down to hold the dinghy for them while they all got off. So It was a planned thing. Now, I thought Cooper had spent £200 million on new drones for the so-called border force to be able to watch these boats coming across. Now, I know...
So did I.
Now I know that our coastal watch is very, very good anyway. Without the drones, it's incredibly good actually, because it's such a busy shipping lane.
Yeah.
But they could have been carrying arms, explosives, anything. Absolutely nobody there. I've stuck your name on it and stuck it up there. It's beggars belief.
It cannot be. I mean, look, and it's just repeating stuff. I'm sure you're exasperated as well, Chris. I don't believe you can't stop boats. I just don't believe it.
No,
I think it's unadulterated BS, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, if I was given the job, I would put the Royal Marines in their fast boats down there, backed up by the Royal Navy, turn the things around and take them back to the French coastline and stick it to Macron, because he's sticking it to us. I mean, the EU passed a diktat, the EU Commission, a couple of years back, when we Brexited. What they did was they removed the necessity for any illegal immigrant to have any paperwork. If you arrived in Greece, you're allowed to travel throughout the Schengen area without paperwork, without being stopped. I mean, that was all designed for us to lay here. Now, Starmer's got to take the blame for a lot of this. We've got to remove the incentives. Why are we giving them hotels, leave to stay, trips to football games. We're not looking after our own people. What the hell is going on?
What is going on that profound point, Chris? Maybe it's meant to be this confusing. Listen, Chris, you've been brilliant. Thank you. Chris in Epsom on a variety of stories there. 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you shortly. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Dev says, I've just managed to get your station on WhatsApp message. So I listen to you daily from Turkey, where I've taken 2 tiers advice and left the UK's dictatorship and infrastructure. Keep up the great work, says Dev. Thank you, Dev. I'm happy to know that you found us via WhatsApp. You can listen on anything there. Somebody had told you this a few years ago. You can listen to the radio on your television. You can order a pizza on your TV. You can listen to watch TV on your phone. The world has changed pretty darn fast. But the good old BBC, of course, central to media matters, is never out of the headlines at the moment, and a scathing review has revealed some BBC staff are treated like untouchables and escape consequences for bad behaviour, with some even continuing to thrive. The report, ordered after the Hugh Edwards paedophile conviction, found managers had failed to address unacceptable conduct, though it stated there's no widespread toxic culture in the BBC's newsrooms and studios. Let's speak with Roger Bolton, former BBC executive and host of the podcast Beeb Watch. Roger, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Look, you've been in the industry a long time. I've been in the industry a long time. We all absolutely know there are some people whose face fits in a way that you think, wow, how have you managed to keep a job, mate? We've all seen those characters around. No matter what happens, no matter how awful they might be, no matter how bullying or shouty they might be, somehow they keep getting that contract.
Yeah, they do. Maybe they do a talk as well. I mean, I think we're talking about human nature here, unfortunately. And excuse me if I'm allowed to say this, bullshitting works disproportionately well often. Look, this report, you say it's scathing was the word you used. I wouldn't say that. So there was no toxic culture, that most people who work for the BBC are proud to do so and love their jobs.
Yeah.
Is there a specific problem in the BBC over bullying? I don't think there is. There's a problem in the television industry, and I think it's got 2 elements to it. The first is that nearly everybody, is on a short-term contract. So if you're a young person desperate to get your contract renewed, you have to be very brave to stand up against a presenter, the show's built around them, and say, hold on, that's not acceptable. You're absolutely dependent on senior executives supporting you. So I think there's the casualised industry bit. The other thing I think which goes on is that naturally television is attracted to outsized personalities. We want to watch them. Then we want to we want to build them up and then we throw them down. And the problem is that they come in and they behave in a certain way and you film it and that's great. And then they behave the same way off camera and you say that's disgraceful.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing to manage.
It is tricky. I always remember the... do you remember the Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand phone call on Radio 2 where they called Andrew Sachs's granddaughter live on the radio? I don't know if you remember that, Roger, a few years ago.
Oh, I remember that. Utterly disgusting.
It was it was awful what was said. But what made it worse was that it was listened to before it went out by a BBC executive who obviously thought, oh, it's just Jonathan and Russell doing what they do, who would never have phoned them up and said, boys, you can't do that. It's obscene. It's nasty. You can't do it. But even the most senior of managers won't confront fairly high-profile presenters.
Well, to be fair, in that case, the controller of BBC Radio 2 resigned, or rather left the corporation shortly after that incident.
Yeah.
So it was after. To be fair. Yeah, what happened again with Russell Day, you've got to look at him and others. And by the way, they're not exclusively on the BBC and Channel 4. And the audience loved a lot of their behaviour. I personally thought a lot of it was disgusting. So on the one hand, they're built up and we love their behaviour. On the other hand, and perhaps 10 years later, we don't, and so on. I think that's a real issue. But I think there's another thing we should separate off, and I think they may get wrong, which is in newsrooms and with the live events, it's very stressful. People often do get worked up, and you shout. Now, and say things probably not acceptable in a calm workplace. As long as people apologise afterwards, as long as people are really, genuinely sorry and are sympathetic, I think you've got to be understanding. I mean, when the clock is ticking down and there's no running order or the item's gone missing, even the best presenters are going to get a bit tetchy. So I think you've got to be careful. It's a tough environment. Yeah. It's made worse by casualisation. But I think ultimately the audience has to take responsibility here. If we build up people to a certain level and then they continue to behave privately as they do publicly, we shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think so. And I wonder will it get better? I was doing a TV show about a year ago with Rob Rinder, and we were sitting there on this panel thing, Roger, and you know what TV's like. Every now and again there's, we've got to stop for a second, and then you wait there for 45 minutes while I don't know what somebody is doing on a ladder or whatever. We're sitting there, and a girl who was a runner came up to us and filled our glasses up with water. And then she came back and went, I'm really, really sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't put enough water in the cup. And Rob said, you don't have to say that. It really isn't a problem. And then after she'd gone, he said to me, I think this is going to be the next Me Too, where people are exposed, not because of necessarily sexual impropriety, but just for being monumental arses, basically, who, when it comes to high demands and talking down to people. He was embarrassed, I was embarrassed, but it was a symbol, if you like, of kind of what we're talking about here, that's the way the industry is structured, that these, presenter figures are put right up there and everybody else is in a different place.
Well, you should be telling us about this as a presenter, but sorry, I'm an ex-presenter, really.
That's true.
I think there's another, very ex. I think there's another issue, though, which is also there, is that we're a younger generation. There's always a generational divide. Yeah. And when you get people in positions of authority, they tend to be 20, 25 years older, shall we say, than a lot of people working for them. Yeah. So attitudes are very different. And when culture changes in the way it's done now about sexual issues, whatever, there's plenty of scope there for misunderstanding. And my daughters say to me sometimes, Dad, you can't say that. And I say, well, hold on, intention matters. I'm not trying to, but, Dad, you can't say those words. So there's a built-in conflict between generations. I think the other thing that's going on is that, and I think it's a particular problem with the BBC, quite a lot of young people think there's no reason why they shouldn't campaign for causes they believe in. Well, that's fine as long as they work for an organisation like yours or whatever, which is built upon opinionated programming and the audience knows what they're getting in the terms of trade. Yeah. The BBC has to be different. And you have to, I mean, I know a lot of your audience won't believe this, you really should put your personal beliefs away and then try and be independent. The other final thing is to say, when you get people, society dreadfully divided, so we say about the Middle Eastern conflict, and you've got Jewish employees in the BBC and you've got Muslim and Palestinians employees in the BBC, they're emotionally, obviously, desperately involved in what's happening. Managing all of those things are very difficult. And I don't know, BBC does it sometimes well, not badly. I sometimes think, I look at people and think, how the hell did you get to the top? But there are one or two really good.
Yeah, there are. But I think as somebody like Hugh Edwards, and I know just, as happens with these things, Roger, as you will know, you talk to some people now, and, people in reasonable positions will go, well, we kind of, we were a bit suspicious. There were some things that were odd. And I know that I think Newsnight, or certainly Victoria Derbyshire, was already running a sort of parallel investigation into some behaviour anyway. But again, it's that fear of, Edwards was a big figure, the kind of almost that horrible phrase, national treasure status, commentating on royal events as well as reading the news, trustworthy, very slick man, looked good on cam, all of that stuff, that no executive was ever going to call him into a room and tell him off, were they?
Well, I think separate one, two things of that. I think what he actually did, nobody in the BBC and anywhere near the top knew the sort of disgraceful, disgusting, appalling things he was getting up to. I don't, it's difficult for us to understand it, you, me, whatever. Put that aside. He had started to behave in the last 4 or 5 years, as I understand it, and told by people, in a slightly strange manner, but it was more, shall I say, erratic. But yes, he did start then to have sort of favourites, and then and throw his weight around, and then say, I know, why haven't I got this award or whatever. It's at that point, I don't think you can blame the BBC management for not knowing about what he went up privately at night. His family didn't know. I think you can say that they should have noticed he was behaving in a increasingly strange way and an acceptable way. They should have intervened. But this is the problem. If you've got a big star, and I think a lot of shows outside of news are built around a star.
Yeah.
The executive producers know there's a scared stiff that if they offend the star, they won't get another commission. Different with Hugh Edwards, but it would be in light entertainment. So I think there's a real issue, in my view, in light entertainment, where one knows of a number of stories where, the key figures behave very badly. And it may not be, the language, whatever. It must just be, I can't bother to come in today, do it tomorrow, when the teams work flat out, work through the night.
Yeah,
so
lots of that.
You get that going on. And then you're absolutely dependent on the commissioning editors or the executives, people of my age or younger, but not much younger, to intervene and protect young people, and that doesn't happen. So I think it's a bigger problem in the industry about middle-aged executives failing to protect younger people against a whole range of exploitation.
Yeah. I think you're right, Roger. Great to have you on as ever. Thank you for your time. That's Roger Bolton, former BBC executive, now host of Beeb Watch, the podcast. It's very easy to be wise after the event with these things. There's loads of rumours in this industry, my industry, connected industries, of people behaving badly, and some of it ranges from that was a bit over the top to man alive. That's almost criminal. Now, you can't prove a rumour. You can't go around shouting and that's what social media does. It just says stuff, whether it's true or not. And there's loads of it on there. And sometimes it will be true. Invariably, it's somewhere in between. It's a bit true, but not as it's been reported. And it's difficult, with presenters, and I know this as a presenter, is that there is a sort of different approach that comes at you. I mean, you're not entirely bulletproof, by the way. Presenters get fired for doing things wrong, or not getting the right audience figures, or for saying something. But I think, generally speaking, there is just a very different approach to presenters than any other member of staff. And it's kind of interesting. I never look at a radio show as being something... I never say my show. I don't know if you ever noticed that. I never, ever, ever have said on my show today. Ever have I used that pronoun. And if I have, it's been accidental. Because I don't ever see it as that. And I think anyone with a brain can see it as that. I'm not looking for house points on this one, by the way. And I think, the team that I work with, I wouldn't hire any of them, frankly, if they weren't forced upon me by some sort of rota or whatever, particularly Amy, who, is frankly... it takes me everything to get in the doors in the day. I'm just going to get emotional talking about this. That acid in your stomach when anxiety kicks in, even the mention of the name. But yeah, I think you have to look at it in that you have to sort of recalibrate it. But anyway, bad behaviour kind of grows because it is given a bit of a free range. And, even when it's really quite bad behaviour, there's a kind of second chance where you just know some people. I mean, I go back to the Andrew Sachs phone call, if you remember it, the Russell Brand thing, which was really horrible. You know, had that been a bloke in local BBC radio, he'd have been gone. He'd have been gone in seconds. It wouldn't have ever got out. What made that story worse is that an executive, I don't think the one that Roger Bolton was referring to got fired, but an executive listened to it beforehand and gave it the green light, because they'd have been too scared to say otherwise. I think it also happens with money that some presenters get. And in fact, Jonathan Ross, poor old Jonathan, I'm a fan of Jonathan Ross, by the way, but I can remember when he signed that massive deal with the BBC to do radio and television. It was multi-million-pound deal. It worked out pro rata. He was doing one TV show a week, but not every week. It was a series, I think twice a year or something. I think he was getting paid more than David Letterman doing the Late Show in America, pro rata. And I reckon the people that signed the contract, I don't blame Ross, by the way, on this. Good luck to him and his agent for facilitating. But I think someone at the BBC actually enjoyed giving that money to someone. When you go, you didn't really need to spend that money. They'd have settled for far less. But there was an ego in the bosses as well. So it happens in that area, and it certainly happens in terms of discipline, where it's kind of like, no, there's no way I'm going to call into the newsroom. I mean, can you imagine giving Fiona Bruce a rollicking? I mean, it's not going to happen, is it? You know, I watched the Antiques Roadshow at the weekend, Fiona. I would say it was pretty bloody awful, frankly. In fact, well, you weren't on your game. The way you dealt with that antique pine chair was ridiculous. The smile on your face had gone. What's wrong? Pull your act together, Bruce. Otherwise, you're not going to get a second series. Nobody would ever say that in a gazillion years. Don't touch our fee, whatever you do. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Well, we are allowing it to happen, and it's not just Datchet. I mean, there are so many towns up and down the country that I'm afraid have been at least temporarily ruined by illegal immigration and indeed sort of semi-legal migration, by which I mean people coming over on false pretenses. They do manage to rustle up the paperwork, but they're just flooding areas and performing only cash in hand jobs, you know, bringing over relatives.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The latest numbers, by the way, on channel migration, we said this was just yesterday, 473 people crossed the channel yesterday. you don't even need to reference it. When I say 473 people crossed the channel yesterday, no one's going, oh, well, the Eurostar was quite quiet, wasn't it? Nobody's thinking that. You just automatically know what that phrase means. Just shy of 500 people in a few hours just came across the channel in a boat. 8 boats made its way across the English Channel with nearly 500 people in. I mean, seriously, it should just be funny if it wasn't so serious. You'd think it was fictitious, something out of a bad sitcom or something. There it is. Let's talk to Angela in Cumbria on that issue of migration. Andrea, how are you doing? Angela.
Yes, that's right. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Angela. How are you doing?
Well, worried out of my head.
Go on.
But very nice to speak to you for the first time.
You too. Welcome along.
Thank you. Well, exactly what you said, I just heard before I phoned to your producer. I'm just astounded. I'm beside myself. I sound young, but I'm old. I'm 76 years old, okay?
Okay.
I cannot believe what's happening. All those people, 11,000 this year, is it now?
Yeah, we're just over, about 10,500. So, yeah.
Please, why don't we can't do it? Okay, we just had to buy somewhere here to stop the government taking it over to put people in there because they're in Whitehaven and Arla, etc., etc. We can't do it. We haven't got the infrastructure, as they say here. We can't do it. Also, it's not fair to all this. Oh, you know all of it, but just please get the Navy out to stop them coming. What is going on? They can't come.
Well, apparently, I mean...
They can come if they apply legally.
Yeah. Apparently, the word is that there's no way you can safely turn a boat around. But I don't think you'd have to turn a boat around in the middle of... You know, these things are travelling at quite a speed. The idea that you'd suddenly intercept it with a Navy, you know, everyone would die. But... So I get that, but there's no reason the boat can't arrive and then everybody that's on those boats go back onto another boat which recrosses the channel.
Yes, however...
I mean, I don't think it would take many journeys to stop it, would it?
I don't think it would. But something like that has got to happen. What are we paying the French for? Just to puncture a boat so they get in another one?
£500 million a year it is, Angela.
No, it's £500 million. Billion. People think it's 500 million. It's not. It's £500 million. Yeah. I mean, they don't want them. They want them to get here, and they're getting here in their droves. And we're just being well, we are invaded. I'm sorry, somebody said that a long time ago and got in trouble for that. But we're being invaded, and it's got to stop.
Well, to be honest, I don't think it matters what word you use. I don't think it matters whether you're left wing or right wing. There's no one on planet Earth that can say this is okay. Is there anywhere else where 500 people a day just come into a country on a boat?
Well,
I mean, it's so weird. Even saying it out loud is so strange. That this is what we're doing. We don't even. It doesn't make front page. Doesn't make any pages. Sometimes it's so regular now.
Because it's. Oh dear, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There's something much more sinister behind. I'm telling you, please, there must be something because it doesn't make sense.
Well, you're right. In the absence of any other explanation, you are forced to go to places that you wouldn't normally go to and go, what is happening here?
Well, Ian, you're the home of common sense, which I've been saying for years. Today is Mike Graham's anniversary. He's the first person this morning to make me laugh for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right, okay? But now I'm crying. I am crying because it's got to stop. Please tell somebody to do something.
All right.
Everybody's moving up. We've got 10,000 people moved away from here last year. We need them. We need those people here. We don't want them leaving the country.
No.
I've got friends who are going to go and live in Spain, Turkey, anywhere but here.
We've got very rich people and successful people whose money we really do need, also legging it for the hills. Listen, Angela, I have to run for no other reason than time, but thank you for that point. And you've just, I really appreciate that, Angela in Cumbria. She just reminded me of something as well. I listened and watched a bit of Mike Graham this morning, and he talked about it being a first anniversary, and I didn't actually correlate that it's all of our first anniversaries. I didn't make that connection. I just thought, oh, well, Mike's been doing this for a year. I thought, well, oh, yeah, so have we. We're back on this floor for a whole 1 year. It does actually seem longer than I thought. This one comes in from Nathan. I heard on another radio station this morning Goodness me. They were saying Americans don't trust Donald Trump. He says he will do things, then he changes his mind. He is useless. Well, some people, Nathan, will say that. Other people will say, well, actually, no. It's part of a grand Trumpian plan. And maybe it is. A lot of you saying Australia managed to solve the boat problem. Why can't the UK? Again, we're told there are differences. Are there differences? Well, it's a boat.
Yes, they're Australian and we're English.
Yeah, it's a boat. And
Good day,
it's the
mate,
sea.
or good day, or goodbye.
Oh, wow.
How are you?
Adam, it was like being back home then for a second, wasn't it?
Bless him, Adam. Lovely.
Unbelievable.
How are you?
Good as gold.
It was good to my word yesterday. I spent 3 hours talking about the Iranian sex toy scandal.
The sex toy scandal.
You can stay. Why? I'll tell you why you can stay. Because this man got to stay, if you didn't listen yesterday, because he convinced a judge in England that he should be allowed to stay and continue his sex toy business because in Iran, under Islamic law, they're banned and he'd be skint and his kids wouldn't eat.
Yes. And apparently he had transportation issues with them as well.
And today we're going to concentrate on the very... spam and corned beef are back on the menu for VE Day.
Wow. Now...
Foodstuffs. You know all about that. Come on, look at Collins's face. Go on.
You see, there's a thing called corned beef hash, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which was always quite nice.
To smoke.
No. Sounds like it, doesn't it? What do you want, corned beef or Moroccan?
Yeah.
Corned beef.
Well, corned beef hash is everything in it, isn't it? It's like bubble and squeak with corned beef, isn't it?
I can't remember what it is, but I remember that being okay. A bit of corned beef. But
it's fried up.
Spam's a no-no.
Spam fritters.
That's a no-no.
Why?
There was something about it. I remember, I think my mum had something
You were
in the
posh,
cupboard
though.
at one point.
You'd have steak and kidney pie and chips.
Oh, God, you
fish and
kidding me?
chops up.
No, my
In
mum
Scunny.
had spam.
Did she?
She had spam and it had a little key on the thing that you opened it with, and it stunk the place out.